fake competitive rules. I don't. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
You just no. I don't play competitively. I just slam goofy stuff into lists and run it
The
at people.
absolute best thing is that I believe the first thing that went live was Lukas saying, AOS, good game, not competitive rules. I don't take it seriously. I like that was the first thing you guys ever said on stream.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about breaking out as competitive 40K players. Let's just start by talking about AOS.
Yeah. Sorry, Rob.
Oh.
Is it live right now?
It is, but I'm getting people to tell us that the audio sounds good.
Oh yeah, I should shout this out in Seth's Discord.
Seth has a Discord?
Yep.
Huh. Good for him.
It's called the Great Green Wah. Oh, the new BITN logo looks super cool.
We have a fancy one, and then we have a simplified one that we use for little things like the Discord.
I was like, where the hell is the disinfection logo? But it's changed.
Yep. There's a lot of branding changing this weekend. I'm going to do the YouTube channel next. We don't have anybody here to tell us if we sound okay, so we're going to give it a minute.
I mean, I can tell us watching it on the other screen.
I like to make sure because there's a bunch of things where echoing happens. And so I just like to make sure that someone comes in and says like, yeah, sure. It is up in my YouTube feed, so I know it's happening.
Indeed.
Sure, people will be here pretty soon.
Yeah.
Give it
3 people currently watching. I've got a feeling I know which 3 that is.
Well, I didn't. This didn't get advertised super much because all the branding's not done. So you might only have like 10 people watch you this time. But I'll tell you that 700 people have watched 40K Fight Club on YouTube so far, and 3,000 people have downloaded it. So
wow, that's awesome.
So let's go.
Indeed.
Let's go. Oh, good. Everyone says we sound okay. All right, I'll do a little intro, and then you guys will get started. Is everybody ready?
Yes, sir.
Okay, you guys are going to do fantastic. Just be yourselves and be excited, right?
You got it.
All right.
Sounds like a plan.
I'm going to let there be a bit of silence so I can find this in editing, and then I'll get us rolling. And here we are, everybody. We're going to have the debut of Best in Faction, The Next Generation in just a moment. Wanted to let you know how this is all going to go. We're going to put this first episode in the BIFPOD podcast stream so that you all can hear it. But if you'd like to hear it from here, it's going to have its own stream. You can find it under BIFPOD TNG, Best in Faction, The Next Generation. All of this and all other content will be on our YouTube, which hopefully later this weekend will be called the Best in Tabletop Network, where you can find this and all of our other shows. But for now, I'd like to introduce you to the first episode ever of BIFPOD, The Next Generation, and it starts right now.
Welcome to Best in Faction.
The Next Generation.
A podcast about breaking out as young competitive 40K players.
I'm Tyler.
I'm Nick.
And I'm Lucas.
And we are here for our very first episode of our brand new show. So, what's going on? We are here to bring back some of that OG BIFPOD energy. We're going to be going to lots of tournaments. We're going to be telling you all about it, and you're going to be following our stories as we sort of try to break out onto this new competitive scene. We've had some pretty good success in the last season, but this year is going to be great, and we're looking forward to taking you along for the ride.
Yeah, the idea here is that, a lot of us we're basically all in our early 20s, right? So, and we've just gotten into the competitive scene in the last year or two. So to kind of bring back, like Tyler said, some of that OG BIFPOD energy to give it the network or the show a bit of a spiritual reboot and kind of talk through our process growing as 40K players, just like Colin, Mitch, and Chuck did so many years ago. We thought that'd be a lot of fun. especially with some new faces to breathe some new life into the pod. We thought that'd be really cool. So what better time to start that than right now?
Absolutely. So let's get started. We're going to do a quick little whip around so you can get to know us a little bit, who we are, where we're at, how we got into Comp 40K, and what we're sort of doing right now. So I'll go ahead and start. My name is Tyler Bortel. I am 22 years old. I'm currently located in the Bay Area in California, but I'm kind of all over the West Coast at times. I got into 40K about, what was it, like 4, 8, 10 or 11 years ago now at this point. But mostly as a casual, you know, as a 12 or 13-year-old child, trying to finger paint models and whatnot. Really got into competitive 40K, like conceptually when I went to undergrad up in Portland. And then lately, the last year or two, have really gotten honed in on the competitive scene as where I am feeling most at home in 40K. I am first and foremost a Bugs player. Forces of the Hive Mind is my main faction. Tyranids, GSC, a little bit of both. I also bust out some Tau from time to time, but I'm mostly here to talk about Bugs. Nick, what do you got for us?
Yeah, I've been playing 40K for a few years, but competitively I started actually right January 2019. Played for about a year, had to stop in March 2020, and wasn't really able to play a game again until April 2021, but I've been really excited, really enjoying 9th edition so far. I've been trying to make Necrons work in competitive 40K since I've been starting, but I've like kind of journeyed into Orcs and Eldar a bit. Big fan of Xenos in general. But this season, kind of looking to go back to Necrons and try them out with some of those new changes. I'm excited about that. Yeah. How to get into 40K? I thought the game looked super fun and had some good friends. Good friend Max that I started playing a weekly league with, and then I met these two guys and encouraged me to go to more tournaments ever since.
All right. And last but probably least, if I'm being honest, is myself. My name is Lukas, troller. I'm 22. Currently hanging out in Portland, Oregon, where I kind of hang out with all these guys in our little micro meta. How did I get into 40K? It must have been like I think 4th or 5th grade, so about 3 or 4 years ago now for me. No, I'm kidding. I'm 22. Yeah, it was like 13 or 14 years ago now. I distinctly remember sitting in my friend's grandmother's house and looking at the 5th edition rulebook with my friend Trevor. And he's like, yeah, these are the orcs. And I'm like, let's go. I already played orcs with Lord of the Rings miniatures game. I'm playing orcs here too, baby. Let's go. So since then, I've played orcs faithfully. I've almost always enjoyed playing the horde play style. A little bit less conducive in 9th edition, but you know, we've made some stuff in 9th edition work. I kind of pioneered the truck knobs with big choppas thing, which was doing some stuff in the fall. And since then, I've stolen a lot of ideas from Mark Perry and played Goff Rush, Goff Pressure, whatever you want to call it, which is what I played at LVO. And it was a lot of fun. So yeah, that's kind of my 40K experience. I really started getting into the competitive scene like a year, maybe 2 ago, when I was spamming 120 Evil Sons boys and mech guns, which everyone was very frustrated with for a solid year or two up here. But yeah, that's a little bit about me, and let's just go ahead and crack on. Just get started with our show. What do we got, Tyler?
Awesome. So this whole first episode is all about, it just happened, you were probably there, the Las Vegas Open 2021. I don't know how they count it. It happened in January of 2022. Myself and Lukas were both in attendance. It was both of our first ever Las Vegas Opens. We had a fantastic time. We're going to break down how the convention ran, all the good stuff about that, and then we'll break it down the actual tournament, some of our games that we played, and how we ended up doing. And sneak peek, it was pretty awesome. So let's jump right into talking about LVO as a whole before we jump into any particular game. So as a convention, what'd you think, Lukas?
Honestly, pretty fun. I don't know. I didn't really know what to expect at all going into it, just because this was it was such an alien concept that everyone talked about in my friend circles and on the Discords and stuff. But I just had no experience. I was like, I'm just gonna go and see what the hell happens here. But yeah, honestly, all things considered, it was a ton of fun. There was obviously some stuff that could have been better, but like especially the food situation, I probably should have made more of a plan there. But overall, had a ton of fun, played some awesome games, got to meet some awesome people, and it was just a chill experience through and through. What about you? Did you have fun? What were the highlights and what were some of the low points?
Yeah, it was freaking phenomenal. Everyone always says that LVO isn't like any other tournament, and I always kind of thought that they were being a little bit, over the top. They are not wrong. I've been to super majors. I've been to Frontline Gaming super majors. There is nothing like Vegas. Simply the amount of talent that is there. It's not very dense talent because there's a ton of people, but the amount of recognizable names, recognizable faces, people that I talk to on a regular basis who live across the country and across the world, all being in one place where you're like, okay, I finished my game. Every time after whatever tournament, I finished the game, I do a little loop around, see how all my friends are doing. The problem is my friends list is like 18 or 20 people long that I really want to check in on and see how all those games are going. And there's just nothing like that. In this, like we got in on Wednesday night so that we could just sort of chill out on Thursday. There was zero chill on Thursday. It was a nonstop party from group to group to group of totally different people. And that was awesome. That all being said, if you've never been to Vegas, it's terrible and I hate it. I do not. If they would just pick up LVO and put it somewhere else, I would be on board with that fully, even if it meant a longer flight. But if that's sort of the mythos of the whole thing is that it's going to be there, so.
It's a reasonable price to pay for such an awesome experience, right? It's like, I have to hang out in this casino. I mean, some people like casinos. It wasn't really my thing. It's like, the casino's a little frustrating, but like, I'm at a badass Warhammer tournament. I'll burn my one curse. We got to keep track of our curses, guys. That's my one curse. Hold me to that. I used it. Yeah, it's like I'm at this awesome tournament, so I'll bear with the casino for now.
So I was not able to go, sadly. So I'm a little curious about what it was like, because I'm really looking forward to going next year. Now, I myself am very used to staying in, such great places as, the Econo Lodge. But you guys got to stay in the Rio. How were the rooms? How was the place?
The gaming room? I'd give it like a solid 3 out of 10. The Rio as a hotel is very run down. Every time we got into an Uber, they'd be like, "So where are you going?" We'd be like, "Oh, the Rio," and they're like, "Oh, I'm sorry," but whatever works. If FLG does it, that's fine. The fact that the lobby and the whole ground floor is a casino, I'm sure that's true of all of them. That's cool. The fact that smoking is allowed in all of these places, I'm not a fan. Not at all. It was gross. And also just generally being in a casino was a highly depressing experience. So that was so-so. Room itself was fine. Lukas and I were rooming together. The carpet's a bit torn up and the molding's coming apart at the seams. And, it's Vegas and it costs way too much money. But, it's Vegas. So I don't know. Lukas, you seem to have a better time with it than I did.
Yeah, I've just got lower standards than you. So I thought it was awesome. No, yeah. I mean, I was blown away that there were some cool food options in there. I mean, I'd always heard that casino food would basically be like stadium food where it's overpriced and terrible. It was pricey, but we had a couple good meals in there, Tyler, I would say. I don't know if you agree, but there was a couple good options in there. So like, it was nice to just take a break from the convention center food and go get food in the casino where it was actually really cool. But yeah, we've talked about food for like 10 minutes. Should we talk about some 40K?
Yeah, let's talk about the meat of it, the actual event.
Yeah. So, Nick, why don't you give us the rundown? What was LVO? How many people were there? Who ran the event? What kind of streams were active? Give us the
look. So I believe there were, got a huge 770 people in attendance, which I know there were rumors about them breaking 1,000, but there's always people that kind of drop out, and this year especially, I know people were a little worried with COVID. But 770, pretty impressive. Ran by FLG, Frontline Gaming. And the streams that were active over the weekend, there was the FLG stream on Twitch, as well as Wargame Live on YouTube, which I know Lukas at least had a game on. Very entertaining to watch.
Yes, sir.
I know they were also using player place terrain in effect, which they've been running at a lot of their tournaments. I'm very interested to hear what you all thought about that.
Yep, definitely going to talk about that. It had a big impact on basically all of our games. I don't think there was one game where we didn't use player play strain to our advantage, or it screwed us in some way because we made some kind of mistake. Other thing we should mention before we get started with deep diving the games, because following along the BIFPOD tradition, we're going to be talking about a lot of our games post-tournaments in the tournament recaps, our COVID protocols, right? Big ups to FLG. They did an awesome job enforcing COVID protocols. They had a mask mandate that if you weren't actively, eating or drinking, you got to put your mask on. And that wasn't just it's nice if that happens. That was a hard and fast rule that they enforced really well. So big props to FLG. We're very thankful for that. It's not a fun thing to have to enforce, but you guys did a great job.
Couldn't agree more. Sweet. So let's dive right in, and we'll talk about terrain as it comes up in games. Who's going on first? Lukas, do you want to tell us a little bit about what you were bringing to this event?
Yeah, sure. So coming from the fall, I was playing basically 30 commandos. So I'm playing orcs, obviously. I basically had 30 commandos, 2 squads of big chopper truck knobs, and some characters. And it was basically a Goff pressure list that wasn't Goff's and wasn't very good because everything was 2 damage. So in a world where Crusher Stampede released, and in a world where Thick City still existed with -1 damage, big choppers were terrible. So I got rid of those pretty quick and stole a lot of ideas from Mark Perry about Goff Rush. For those who aren't familiar with Goff Rush, it's an archetype where the gist of what you take are 2 to 3 smashy characters, a couple of units of Mega Knobs and trucks that are truck boys so they can get out and charge after a truck moves, a couple kill rigs with some beast snaggers inside, and then the rest is basically filler of whatever you want. So to go over my list in specific, I had 2 of those squads of Mega Knobs with flamethrowers and trucks. I had a truck boss to give them +1 to hit. He was -1 to wound and 1-up armor, 4-up invuln to try to keep him alive, to give out that buff for longer. He was also a truck boy. We had 2 squads of 10 commandos, a squad of 10 storm boys, 3 squads of 10 beast snagger boys. 2 of them were riding in kill rigs. And then the last of it was 2 beast bosses on Squigosaur. Very sad they went up in points, but they did a lot of work for me last weekend. One of them is +1 attack and strength, and then the 5 of Feel No Pain. So Beast Side Mantle Might is right. And then the other one is Head Whoppers, Kill Chopper, Brutal But Cunning. That guy is awesome. Nick has been, both Nick and Tyler have been on the receiving end of this guy just picking up a whole squad and then not being able to be killed in melee until he gets to melee, and then he fights on death, and then
could you quick explain what Brutal But Cunning is? I know that some people are familiar with it.
Yes,
but
Brutal
why
But
is
Cunning,
this guy so scary?
Right. More people are familiar with Competitive Edge, so I'll say Brutal But Cunning is basically Competitive Edge. So if you don't reach the inflict damage step, if you fail to hit, wound, or the opponent makes a save, you make an additional attack with the main weapon that you're equipped with. So he gets 6 attacks with Head Whoppers, Kill Chopper. He gets 3 Squig Jaw attacks, and then if any of those fail to reach inflict damage step, you get another attack with the Head Whoppers, Kill Chopper. And all of that has the potential to do mortal wounds. All of that has the potential to exploding hits with Goffs. Like, the guy does a ton of damage. So he's pretty cool. That was the list. Let's see. Did I get everything? Yeah, basically I got everything. It's the gist of it is you throw everything into the midfield. Your opponent can't kill it all, and whatever's left slams home and basically deals a knockout blow, keeps your opponent out of the midfield for long enough that you win on points. A lot of fun. It does a ton of melee damage. You very rarely end the game with any models left, but you very often end the game with a win. So it's a lot of fun. What you got, Tyler? What'd you bring to LVO?
Yeah, for sure. So going into LVO was hot on the heels of the new Genestealer Codex that came out, which was obviously a very big deal for bug players everywhere. They actually, if memory serves, they adjusted the LVO rules deadline to make sure that Custodes and GSC got in. And I was very upset about this at the time because I was very happy with my list, but ended up working out very much in my favor. So we've got the new GSC book out. I had been playing Leviathan Forces build that was essentially the same thing as what John Lennon had been playing. But going into this, John Lennon, myself, and Alex McDougall sort of put our heads together and figured out exactly what the best thing for Forces was going forward. And what we basically settled on was all the Leviathan guns are still stupid. They're really freaking good. And all the new GSC combat is really good. So let's put those two things together. But those are both kind of CP intensive, and we kind of want to go one way or the other. So we decided, okay, let's dump all the command points into the Leviathan stuff so that we can have that firing at all cylinders as often as possible, and then make the GSC stuff work almost completely independently so that it doesn't need any CP. It can go do its own thing, and we'll apply a lot of pressure with that. The other big thing about this list is that it has to operate at all ranges. So if you sit all the way back, you're not playing the game, I'm winning. If you sit most of the way back, you're in Hive Guard range. If you come close, you're in Devil Gaunt range. And if you get into combat, you're getting Pure Strained in the face. So I'll walk you through the list in a sec, but that's the idea, is to have functional damage at all levels and to have your secondaries built into the list. We'll talk about it in the games, but I think in every single game, I took Rod, engage, and to the last without even thinking about what my opponent was taking, and that ended up working out very well. So we'll get into that more later. But the list itself is 2 patrols, the first of which is our Hive Fleet Leviathan in patrol. We've got a Hive Tyrant leading that. He's the Warlord. He's got a Heavy Venom Cannon, Monster Siding Talons. He's taking Catalyst and Paroxysm. And he's got the 5-up regen command points relic, and he's got the stratagem for 2 Warlord traits, so he has Chapter Master and redeploy 2 units. We then have 2 glorious units of Termagants, 26-man strong, all with Devourers, of course, and a bare naked squad of Tyranid Warriors with the Bioweapon Bond Synaptic Link for that good +1 to hit. Squad of 6 Hive Guard, nothing fancy. A Maliceptor, who's taking Onslaught and has the Synaptic Link for reroll damage and 6s to wound or an extra AP. And my glorious 3-man Sky Slasher squad, the greatest unit there ever was. Onto the Twisted Helix Genestealer Cult Patrol. That is led by a Patriarch, who's taking Mass Hypnosis and Might from Beyond, so that's Fight Last and +1 attack. He's bodyguarded by a Locus. We got a 10-man squad of Acolytes with max drills, 2 5-man squads of Acolytes, functionally naked, 2 10-man squads of Pure Strain Genestealers, one of which has the pregame move 9 inches or get your blip picked up, and one of which has +1 attack in the first round of combat. We got a 5-man squad of Adelan Jackals. That's the biker dudes, just for running around and move blocking and stuff. And we round out the list with our glorious Goliath truck with cache of demolition charges for that auto-exploding goodness. So that's the list.
I was on the receiving end of that auto-exploding, which we'll talk about at some point. But that guy is a pain.
Something I want to ask about Tyler, because I know a lot of the Forces builds beforehand had the Malanthrope as like the Warlord, right? With a lot of the Warlord traits on it. Why did you bring the Hive Tyrant? I know some people might be able to figure it out, but I'd like to hear.
Yeah, for sure. So the Hive Tyrant, all credit goes to Lennon on this, because this was his like brilliant innovation that sort of made all of the list happen. And then Alex McDougall got rid of it because he's a coward. But anyway, he made top 4. I didn't. So
bold words.
You can say words. But anyway, the Hive Tyrant is there because you need an HQ that does a lot of things. You only want 1 HQ because you want to spend as few points on this as possible. You need someone who's a Psyker because Onslaught alone is not enough. You definitely also need Paroxysm, and you'd also really like Catalyst because the list does have 2 Fight Slash spells, which is Chef Kiss, just glorious. So you want someone who's going to cast 2, possibly, someone who's going to hold the relic, and someone who's going to carry the Warlord traits, which could be anyone. So that really gives you like the options of Neurothrope, Hive Tyrant, Swarm Lord, Flying Hive Tyrant. Those are basically your options you have to choose from. You're obviously not taking the Swarm Lord because he's a lot of points for access to a double move ability that you don't need. And the Winged Hive Tyrant isn't really doing a ton for you. So the immediate thought is, just take a Neurothrope. It's the cheap one. But the Hive Tyrant, once you kit him out with all that fancy equipment, becomes 185 points, which means that he becomes my third to the last target over a squad of Devil Gaunts, which it would be otherwise. So all those upgrades are strictly to make him more expensive. He is strictly a backfield handout Chapter Master, handout redeploy caster, who can hide, because we've been taking Swarm Lord as a to the last forever. This guy has functionally the exact same, profile, both defensively and silhouette. So he's pretty easy to hide. He scores to the last, and he sits in the backfield. And occasionally his gun and his combat do something, but he's mostly there as a third to the last with 2 psychic powers. And he is fantastic. Would recommend.
Yeah, very cool. I know that's something that we've seen from a lot of competitive players, is them kind of bouncing around point upgrades so that some like kind of seemingly random unit is actually performing both a supporting and a secondary role. Now, I like that you talked about your secondaries, right? I know in list construction, something that I hear a lot, something that I try to hold myself to, is at least try to bake 2 secondaries into the list. If you can get 3, like what you did, that sounds great, because then it doesn't matter what your opponent's playing. It doesn't matter what mission you're playing. Now, Lucas, I know you didn't talk about it. Could you talk about any, just really quickly, I know we'll talk about specific secondaries, but any secondaries you really considered when building your list?
Yep, my list is all about midfield bullying. So Mark likes taking Linebreaker. I don't like Linebreaker because I'm not quite that aggro. But Stranglehold, easy peasy. Stranglehold is one of the best secondaries in the game, and if you don't get Stranglehold every turn with Goth Rush, you're probably not executing some parts of your plan correctly. Banners, also really easy. Your opponent doesn't want to come toward you, so if you can incentivize them to by taking banners, all the better. So banners and Stranglehold are really my 2 staples. I basically never took Rod. And then the last thing was just, even if I get 7 points out of No Prisoners or 9 points out of Assassinate, worst case scenario, I'll take Stomp 'em Good, which is kill more in melee for orcs. All of those were viable options, but the core 2, like you said, I always bake 2 into my list, and those were banners and Stranglehold, which I took just like Tyler basically every game. So yeah.
All right, that's interesting. I definitely want you to go more into like some missions, like especially battle lines, for example, is traditionally kind of a iffy banners mission. So I want you to go into that.
I will take banners on battle lines. It did not serve me very well against Anthony, but we'll talk more about that at the end.
All right. Anything else about your list? Should we get started with your actual games?
Should we talk about goals real quick? What did you think what were you hoping to go coming into the event, Tyler? What was your plan?
Yeah, for sure. So walking into this event, I was very confident that I had all of the tools that I needed. I had this list, which was very good. A lot of the very top players would agree. It's like got everything that we want. I mean, Alex took it as far as he did, his slight variant on it. So I have the right tools. I have all the matchups. I have the right experience. My actual goal had nothing to do with how well I performed. It was just to outperform Alex, because we were neck and neck for best in faction forces of the Hive Mind. That didn't end up working out, but I would have been very happy to go 1-5 if he went 0-6. But realistically, based on results, I was thinking, okay, let's definitely go 4-2. 5-1 would be great, and if we can keep going after that, that's awesome. It's my first LVO. I don't want to set my expectations too high. But I know I have all the tools, so if something's going to keep me from going forward, it's going to be myself, and I'm really excited to learn and figure out really where I fit to get some growth figured out. So that was sort of me going in. What about you, Lucas?
Yeah, for me, I had not been to a major since BAO in 2019, so I was definitely not. Yeah, it was a pretty long time. So I figured I would be happy with 4-2. I'm hoping to go 5-1, but that's a pretty high expectation. So I would have been happy with 4-2. That was my goal coming into the event. All right, so we got some games. Let's read us some lists, Nick. What do we got for day 1 for Tyler?
Yeah, day 1, we're gonna start with Tyler. Round 1 looks like you're up against a Death Guard, the Inexorable list, running Mortarion, a Terminator Lord, 10 Poxwalkers. We got 2 Volcons with the missile hats. 5 Death Shrouds, squad of 3 Death Shrouds, a Foul Blightspawn, that's that annoying little fight last guy, a Tallyman, 2 Plague Drones with Flesh Mowers, and a single Plague Burst Cannon. So tell us about this game, Tyler.
Yeah, for sure. So this game was up against a guy's name is Kyle College. Sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong. Fantastic opponent. This guy was a real pleasure to play against, and a great round 1. And man, was he a competitor. I walked out of this game and was like, oh my gosh, if this is going to be like, this is Death Guard. Like, people in the top tier community do not think very highly of Death Guard at all. And if my Death Guard game is going to be that close, the rest of the tournament's going to be, I'm going to get myself rocked. So we went into this game. We're playing the missions in order. So this is on Retrieval. I am feeling pretty good. Retrieval is a really stagnant kind of mission, right? You're both going to sit on multiple objectives for basically the whole game. We're playing on Field Base, which has those really big foam hills. We both slap one of those in front of each of our midfield objectives, so those are all going to be pretty safe. So primaries are going to line up nicely, which means that it's going to come down really to secondary. We did end up scoring 45-45 on primary, after I made a slight mistake and gave him the 15 round 4, and he went first. So I got the 15 round 5. But yeah, like I said, like always, I took Rod to the last and engage. He took banners, no prisoners, and engage. And at the end of the day, we sort of have a bit of a standoff. Mortarion flies into my face and sticks around for a little bit longer than I was expecting, and gets him a couple of extra engage points. I make this really one critical mistake that swings the game out of my favor for a minute. I put one squad of Devilgaunts, I redeploy them into reserve. They come in his backfield on turn 2 using Questing Tendrils. And I blow one of his dreadnoughts off the table, happily, because that's what Devilgaunts do. It's silly. And I debate double shooting to kill off his 10 Poxwalkers who are standing on that sort of front objective behind the wall. And I say, oh, you know what? It doesn't super matter that much. If I do so, I'm missing out on a charge opportunity, because if I hit a 9-inch charge into those Poxwalkers, lights out, game is over immediately. But also, it doesn't really matter, right? Because we're both going to be holding 2 objectives. We're both scoring 10 points. What's the big deal? I wasn't thinking about the fact that one of my objectives was a little bit poorly defended, and I wasn't going to be able to get more people over there if Mortarion stuck around a turn longer than expected, which is exactly what happened, and that gave him a 15. So that really put me on the back foot, because I was thinking, oh, I'm up 5 on primary, just go parity on secondary and I'll win the game. Not so much. I needed to win on secondary. At the end of the game, I got my full 12 rods. I ended up with 11 engages, which was great, but he got 12 on no prisoners, and he ended up with 8 on engage. So I am going in up, not like 3 points. Yeah, and he's going to grab a couple banners at the end. And he, at the very last turn, his Plague Burst Crawler, who's been lobbing shots into Hive Guard that I just don't really mind all game, hot rolls and kills the last 2. So I lose one of my to the last, and I freak out, but I do all my math. I check that it works. And on the last turn, I move a couple things to get 3 on engage at the end of the game. And I pull out the game 88-85. It was way closer than I was hoping for round 1 into Death Guard, but it was a ton of fun. The big moral of the story for this game, and I know I'm taking a while, but this is my most interesting game of day 1. Spoilers. Is to try to see the whole game as far ahead of you as possible. Realizing that I should be winning by 5 on primary, excellent. Just make sure I actually deliver on that. And then doing all the math on secondaries, knowing that I'm down 3 on Rod, that last 5 onto the last is super important. Should probably have put some more resources into defending those Hive Guard, but Catalyst on a little more often, do the numbers on engage, play the points, and you can win a pretty stalematy game. Like his Death Stride never did anything. They just sort of waltzed up the table, never got into any important combats. That's great, but you don't win the game by not getting killed. You win the game by scoring points. So that was sort of my big takeaway from round 1. And like I said, I pull out the dub 88-85.
Yeah, Death Guard are capable of those close games every once in a while, so good work grinding it out. All right, Lucas, you're round 1. Which, if you all want to watch this game,
Nick, I think we're gonna go through.
All of yours. Okay, yeah. My bad. All right, my bad. We'll do Tyler's round 2. So round 2, Tyler, you played against the Menace, Thick City. It was a real space raid Thick City though, which is pretty cool to see. It's got Cabal the Black Heart for the Cabal. It's got Artist of the Flesh, the -1 damage that makes Thick City what it is, and Custom Witch Cult, which we've been seeing a lot more of this lately. I think just Sean Naden's been playing it a lot. Stimula Innovators, which is an extra drug. It's like a random drug, I believe, like a D3 that you roll, which is really cool when you do the double drugs. And Test of Skill, which is +1 to wound against monsters and vehicles, which you don't have very many in your list, right? So not super impactful. But the meat of this list is Thick City. We got an Archon with the nice little Animus Vitae and Fight Slash. Good choices. Homunculus. We got he's the upgraded Homunculus. We have the Succubus with Competitive Edge and the Triptych Whip. And 10 Homoxites. Those are the upgraded racks. 5 Cabalites. Squad of 17 racks. 2 10-man rack squads. 5 Witches. 2 10-man Helion squads with Adrenalite. 3, 3, and 2 Talos, which I'm guessing were equipped with the Heat Lances. And a Raider. So what can you tell us about this game?
Yeah, I think I think we're gonna go through day 1. Swap back.
Good work grinding it out. All right, Lucas, you're round 1. Which, if you all want to watch this game,
Yeah, so this game was into Brett Cross. Brett is similar to us, kind of a newer player on the competitive scene, but has been doing really well. He's obviously playing a very competent list, and he's doing a competent list with his own little personal twist on it, which I always love to see. It's always a little more fun when there's something you might not expect, like a real space raid. This game, we're playing on mission 12, which is Scorched Earth. So it's a Dawn of War mission. And I'm a little bit nervous because Thick City can get to you pretty quick. But I know in my back pocket that this entire list is really designed to put a handle on Thick City. So I'm not freaked out too much. I get the first turn, which was really nice because I had put a lot of thought into how exactly he would get first turn charges off. He's got is the Animus Vitae, that's the grenade that gives them +1 turn on Power from Pain?
Yep. It is, yes.
Yeah, okay. So he's got that on his Archon. So like the first turn play that I have to be ready for is the Archon can get in the Raider. The Raider can an Ether Sail move 1,000,000 inches. Then it can fire its Phantasm grenade launcher and then fire and fade to move further. And then at that point, or maybe I don't think you can just it can't Ether Sail because it can't advance and then throw the grenade, but it can move,
that is true.
shoot, fire and fade. So it goes like 21 total inches, and then the grenade can get lobbed. And if that hits me, then his entire army is advancing charging turn 1, and I'm in deep bad state.
Yeah, it's a very common Dark Eldar play to watch out.
So I'm really scared of this happening. If it goes off, I'm in big trouble. And I'm thinking about how to make it not happen turn 1. And I'm like, okay, cool. Well, I've got this list has 1,000,000 redeploys because the Bike Scout move, the Gene Stealer Scout move, the Blips can be redeployed. 2 NIDS units get redeployed. So like, my deployment doesn't have to be perfect. I went first, though, so none of it mattered. I blew that Raider clean off the table, and now there's no chance of first turn charge. And when there's no chance of first turn charge, you line up your entire army. Talos are what? Move 8, charge 12, and that's all they can do turn 1. So you line up your army 20 inches away from them and say, what are you going to do about it? And that was really the entire game. Everything sort of comes down to that. And then turn 2, we reset at 26, because the problem is, the Devil Gaunts put out so much damage, as do the Pure Strains, that he can't really afford to take 2 turns to get to me. Right? If he sends out all his Talos, I will kill probably 5 or 6 of them. And that's just like, there's no coming back from that for him. So he has to sit back. I don't think that there's a world in which he wins while sitting back, unfortunately. We talked about this a lot after the game. So I got to control the whole table and play the whole game like that. His Talos basically didn't leave his deployment zone, because I would regularly not put anything worth going after within that 26-inch range bubble, or 26. Move 8, advance 6, charge 12, 26. So it's really just the Hellions that I'm concerned about, and the Hellions didn't get the drugs that they wanted to be able to actually go infinite inches. So it was a pretty solid game. I again took Rod Engage to the last. He took Herd the Prey, Rod, and no prisoners. I maxed primary. He gets like 30 on primary, and I drop 5 points on Engage, and obviously 3 points on Rod. So I end the game 92-62. Brett did some good stuff. We talked about it at the end. The list archetype is probably not really great for his play style. He's looking for something a little bit less full throttle aggression. He really did not want to play the version of the game where he full sends everything turn 1. And that was the only path that he had toward a potential victory. So comfortable win in 92-62 into Brett, who was, again, a fantastic opponent.
Is there a world where the Hellions can be concerning to you if they get like double movement drug and then they double that for like +8-inch move? Those guys have the infantry keyword, believe it or not. So like, is there any concern that they are yeeting themselves in and killing your Hive Guard, or like blending up some Devil Gants and tagging stuff?
Absolutely. They are terrifying. I killed one squad turn 1, or at least reduced it to like 2 or 3 models because of that. The other squad is just parked way out of range. So if he hot rolls, I'm screwed. And if he doesn't, I'm fine. But something to notice about this list is, because it is a real space raid, and even more so because it is custom Witch Cult, he doesn't have access to the stratagems for Cult of Strife. So he doesn't have access to ignore Overwatch. So as long as I park Devil Gaunts in front of the Hive Guard and I don't give him a spot to charge from behind terrain, which was pretty doable given the player play setup, he's getting overwatched by Devil Gaunts, probably Devil Gaunts with Chapter Master. That's going to do a real hurting on him. And then if he goes into the Devil Gaunts, I'm going to break coherency and he's not going to be able to get a wrap off. I will happily lose a squad of Devil Gaunts for his one fast unit, which will then get picked up the next turn. So I was ready for that, but it absolutely is the concerning threat. And the fact that I didn't even have to do any of that because he didn't roll the right drug made my life a lot easier.
Yep. Nice.
All right. Anything else of note, you feel like?
I think that's probably about what I have to say about that game.
Awesome. Well done. And we move on to your last game of day one versus Ravenwing. Okay. We got a Talon Master with Arbiter's Gaze. Samael, haven't seen him in a while. Ravenwing Apothecary with the all-important Selfless Healer. That's like free bring back guy. 3x3 Melta attack bikes. Looks like 3 bike squads. Looks like each one had 3 guys and a single Melta attack bike. So a total of, is it 12 Melta attack bikes? Okay. Lazarus. 2 squads of 2 Deathwing commands. Those are the bodyguard guys, I believe. And 3x1 land speeder tornadoes with multi-Melta. So packing a lot of Melta, which would have been a problem if you were playing Crusher probably, but you were not.
Yeah, so this round 3 was into James Weston, who, again, I got great opponents day one, all amazing people. I got to admit, when I saw this list, I was like, oh, wow. Like, this guy went 2-0, and I got really lucky to get to play into him because he's not bringing anything that's particularly meta-oriented. This guy loves him some Ravenwing. I can appreciate loving your faction. So we had a good little time here. The amount of Melta is kind of terrifying for my Tittle ass, and we did play Vital Intelligence, which I was honestly kind of bummed because Vital is my best mission, and burning it on not necessarily a crazy hard matchup felt like a little bit of a missed opportunity for me, but so it goes. All of the Melta guns could, in theory, do real damage to my Hive Guard, to my Maleceptor, to my Hive Tyrant if they cut angles. The unfortunate reality is that this list is made of paper, and my list is made of DACA. So he moved out really impressively turn 1. I was like, oh man, that's real scary. The blips, of course, I got to go second. Really blunt any chance at an Alpha Strike, though. He's not charging me with anything. He's not really shooting anything that matters to me. He got some pot shots off into some Devil Gaunts and some bikes, if memory serves. And then I just, took it to him. I just brought a lot of pain. The Ravenwing stuff all is a 4-up invuln. It's all toughness 5, but it's only 4-up invuln against shooting, so the pure strains go bada and kill everything. So this was a pretty solid exercise in focusing on points and not just on killing, even though the killing was pretty easy. At the end of the day, I think I beat him 40-20 on primary, and I dropped again got 10 points on engage, lost 3 points on rod, but only got 40 primary, so I dropped down to an 87-58 victory over here. For the end of day one, this guy was, again, absolute pleasure to play against. Really enjoyed our game. Not a ton to take away from this, though. From a super competitive mindset, it was nice to end day 3 with what felt like a little bit of a layup. So that was my day 1. I'm walking out 3-0, feeling pretty great. I was very scared of losing that Death Guard game. Like I said, it was a 3-point game, and playing in a couple of other games where I got to flex the list a little bit more than just my brains. Very nice. And that brings me to the end of day 1. Nick, you want to run us through what Lukas got into round 1 with his orcs?
Yes, very excited to talk about this game, at least. If you want to watch this game, this is the game, one of the first games that Lukas played on stream, actually, on War Games Live on YouTube. And he was playing round 1 against Grey Knights. It was a mixed brotherhood of, I think, the Rapiers and the Prescient Brethren. We had 2 Grandmasters in the Dread Knight suits. Drago, which I think there was a very amusing Drago versus horde of Beast Naga boys at one point. Very exciting to watch. A Chaplain, 15 Strike Marines, 10 Interceptors, 10 Terminators. I believe each of these squads were split into squads of 5. A Venerable Dreadnought, and a Rhino. So, Lukas, tell us about this game.
Yeah, this game was against Kyle Connolly. We got to our table and then had set everything up, and then were asked to be on stream. So we packed everything up and got started half an hour late. It was good fun, though. This was Kyle's, I played against Kyle Connolly is his name. it was his first big tournament. So not to sound arrogant in any way, shape, or form, but I've played against Grey Knights plenty. So once we kind of went through the first turn, I was kind of like, okay, this game is solid. So I'll teach him kind of a little bit about what orcs can do, a little bit about my speed, a little bit about all the damage my army can do. So we had a good time, but not too much interesting going on tactically here. The best thing the Grey Knights can do against a pressure list is sit back 30 inches away, get however many points they can, and chip away. What Kyle did was he walked his Grandmasters forward without support and got them both killed on turn 1, which was not good for business. So yeah, basically a combination of me dealing that crippling blow in terms of killing power on turn 1, and then him not being able to clap back because all of his army was out of position basically meant that I just ran away with this game. I took Stranglehold and Banners as I normally do. I just kind of crammed everything into his face once he overcommitted, and I took it from there.
Yeah, I know something that a lot of Grey Knights players are used to is having that one Grandmaster with the reposition one shot, but your list has like 4 guns.
Yeah.
So
I won't shoot that guy with my Slugga. I promise I won't be too broken up about it. I will not shoot that guy with my 1 Slugga, and I'll just have to live with that fact.
Yeah. Now, something about this game, too, that I think was great is, I mean, something that we always try to do is be great sports to our opponents, and especially never try to hide information from them. And this game, since it's streamed, Lukas was demonstrating it very well. He was explaining everything as he was doing it, asking if you didn't understand it. And I thought that was great to see, especially since I was like the first connection to LVO like the world had. It was the first stream that was up. So kudos to you, Lukas.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's always good to be kind of to be conciliatory toward the opponent. It's trying to gotcha your opponent is not a good way to win a game. So yeah, it was just awesome to be able to kind of help Kyle through the game, suggest some things, because I know it's his first game against melee orcs, so like he's gonna make some mistakes, and I'm like, yeah, you probably should have done that a little differently. You should have been less aggressive. You didn't know how fast I could be. That's something to change for next time. So I'm sure whoever's down there in his area is going to get a shellacking if they're playing melee orcs into his Grey Knights in the future. But it was good fun.
Could you talk a bit more to that, Lukas? You said that you have a lot of Grey Knight reps, and one of the things that can often be really hard as like lower end competitive players like us is to get the reps into the right sort of armies. How was that helpful to you to have played into Grey Knights a bunch when you got into what's considered a high A, low S tier army in the field?
It's about where to place the terrain and about the macro strategy. So I knew that if I could set up a place kind of in the middle of the field where I could project a lot of threat onto, because this is retrieval mission, his 2 objectives that are closest to me, if I can project a lot of threat there while keeping my trucks and kill rigs safe, that's great, because then he has to, I mean, all of his units, like the cheapest unit he has is 5 strike marines for 110 points or however expensive they are. That's not cheap. And if I can dump something into that ruin that kills that unit 100% of the time, and then stands on that objective and needs to be cleared out, that's kind of where I need to be. So the first couple times I played against Grey Knights, I made tons of mistakes. I was putting my terrain all over the place, not really understanding what I was doing. And then slowly I realized, I need to set up this macro strategy of keep my assets safe in the midfield so that I can project so much threat. And that's kind of what I did overall. You can see, if you watch my game on stream, that I set up ruins, not just like protecting my midfield objectives, but in a spot where I can get to his. That's more important for pressure lists, is getting to your opponent's objectives rather than staying safe on your own. Yep.
Awesome. Nick, you want to break down his round 2 opponent?
Yeah. Round 2 up against Death Guard. Also the Inexorable. So both of you guys played against an Inexorable Death Guard, but this is a different player than who Tyler played against. Looks like we have a Demon Prince who ignores AP 1 and 2, so big bummer for all your Choppas. A Malignant Plaguecaster with that Skull of Glothula. 37 Poxwalkers split across multiple squads. 15 Possessed, so a bit of a melee punch. Foul Blightspawn, which I know is quite annoying for a melee army. 2 Flesh Mower Drones. 3 PBCs. 2 Miasmic Malignifiers. And Epidemius, which looks like it was summoned during the course of the game.
Right. So this is kind of this game was against Daniel Harrison playing Death Guard. This game is basically not in its entirety, but what a lot of people have been doing with Demon Engine, Death Guard plus Epidemius, where you start building up a tally and try to get toward basically +1 toughness as fast as possible. So and also reroll ones for efficiency on your Demon Engines. The list is like, I thought it was going to be just kind of a joke, but the list is actually pretty cool. And there's a lot of questions that need to be answered. Unfortunately, this game was also not the most interesting because at the end of the day, he moves 4 inches, has no advance in charge, has no fallback in charge. So if I just bottle him up in his DZ, he's going to have your 15 points onto the last. That's fine with me. You're never going to get Stranglehold. You're going to get 6 points on Spread the Sickness, and I'm just going to win off primary and secondary points. So the strategy I went for, well, first I'll talk about the little terrain features he has. The Miasmic Malignifiers, actually pretty cool. The way they ruled those at LVO was the little pipe that's not attached to them, but a separate piece that's the small little pipe. That thing is -2 to charge through. It's difficult terrain, and it's also heavy cover. I think, or maybe the actual the big piece of terrain has heavy cover. Either way, one of those gives him +1 armor saves, and the pipe gives him -2 to charge through. So you set up that pipe in the 4-inch gap between pieces of terrain, and now all of a sudden I'm -2 to charge through that. Inexorable strat for another -2, so I'm -4 to charge through that. And if I even make the charge, then all of his guys have +1 armor saves. So 5 possessed sitting behind one of those little pipes, really, really irritating for me to deal with. I learned that the hallway, I throw 2 units at him to try to kill some possessed, thinking I was going to wipe him out, and I ended up killing 1 possessed and getting both those units wiped. So I was like, okay, this is going to be an interesting game now. But yeah, it was good overall. I still had enough assets in the midfield that I just kind of bullied him off the midfield objectives, and I ended up winning the game 94-64. But kudos to Daniel. The list was pretty cool. It was like also his first big tournament, and his list was very unique and creative. Like, I'd never seen the Miasmic Malignifier before, so to see it actually used and put to amazing effect was pretty awesome. So big ups to him.
Yeah, it seems like this sort of strategy would have been better. I guess it would have been a little scarier, a little more potent on a mission where you guys have like even number of objectives on either side, like a retrieval mission. But with it being, I think, Scorched Earth round 2,
yeah,
the 2 midfield objectives, it sounds like he had to come out and fight you, and you use that to your advantage.
Yeah, as soon as that he had both Miasmic Malignifiers on one flank. So as soon as my first charge failed on those, I learned quickly and said, oh, crap, that's not going to be good. I'm going to pressure the other side and just bullied him off that objective from turn, I think, 3 onward. So he was getting a bunch of 5s on primary. He stopped getting Spread the Sickness. He got Stranglehold 1 time. So, yeah, that's kind of how it went there. But that's a fairly standard strategy against Death Guard. You can throw your army away and die just as long as you keep them off the midfield objectives for long enough.
Yeah. Well, that's good to hear. Using your speed to your advantage.
Yes, sir.
Anything else you want to talk about, or do you want to move on to your round 3?
I think we're ready for round 3.
All right. So round 3 on Vital Intelligence, we got Forrest Phantom playing Space Wolves, running the ever-present Whirlwind of Rage for the funny triple explodes, and Born Heroes. He's got the Chaplain on bike with Wise Orator, Hunter. I believe Hunter's the advance in charge, yeah?
Yep.
And then a Wolf Lord with Armor of Rust, Imperium Sword, 5 Assault Intercessors, 15 Wolf Guard, 2 Redemptors, 2 Wolfendreads, 4 Cyber Wolves, and 5 Thunderwolf Cavalry. So how was this game? Seems like a real scrap.
It was a real scrap. He went first. I was concerned because I thought he was going to get some poke damage in and kind of stay away from me. But Forrest saw red and he wanted blood, so he threw his entire army into the middle of the table. And I was like, okay, dude, you want to do this? Let's go. So we just threw armies at each other for a while. It was the kind of game where he made 4 charges in one phase. I made 4 charges in one phase, so we were interrupting each other. We're like, yep, something's going to die. Screw it. Let's just do this anyway. So it was a lot of fun. He basically turn 1, he killed 10 commandos. Turn 1, I responded by putting my entire army in the middle of the table where he was. And so from there, we just kind of bashed each other. Something that's pretty cool about Space Marines, it's something that I'm not used to from early in 9th edition when they were so powerful, was they've kind of been outpaced in terms of the value they provide. Space Wolves are actually pretty good at this because they can, punch up so hard with 6s or triplers and chapter master rerolls and stuff like that from the chaplain chant.
+1 to wound as well.
Yep, if they make a charge. Yep. So that's scary. That being said, at the end of the day, there's still, you know, a 30-point dude who's 2-up armor, 4-up invuln, who never comes back to life. So I just killed enough stuff early that I kind of snowballed. And he took some action-related secondaries. He took secondaries that relied on being in multiple places. And if I kill half his units on turn 1, and he kills half my units back, now all of a sudden he's not getting those points, and he's starting to lose the trade war just because his stuff is a little bit overpriced for what it does in the current meta. So I kind of abused that fact because, you know, it was just easy for me to keep something cheap on my vital intelligence. So vital intelligence, right? On my 2 midfield objectives, I put a cheap unit that was just going to be hard for him to remove that his Volkite couldn't see. So that was 10 commandos. And then everything else just occupied him in the middle of the table. So I was racking up points, I was taking out his assets, and he was just fighting to stay alive and kind of keep control of his battle lines. Not the mission, the concept. He was keeping control of his army and where everything was. Yeah, it was good fun. Ended up 89 to 39. Orcs just play the pressure primary game so much better than Space Wolves, Space Marines in general. We just have more assets, more things to do. Ended up being pretty good. But big ups to Forrest. He's a longtime Space Wolf player. He was an awesome opponent. All of my day 1 opponents were really awesome. They just, unfortunately, I had 3 power armor opponents, and Orcs kind of dookie on power armor right now.
Yeah, I played against Forrest in the past. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, yeah, I played against Forrest in the past as well, and I had a great game with him. So
no, yeah, he's super cool.
Oh,
he's a great Space Wolves player. It's just a bit unfortunate that their stuff's so expensive right now.
Yeah, Tyler, you're going to say something?
You were mentioning how, like, there was something about the secondary action economy that was happening there that was really to your advantage. Could you talk about what secondaries were taken and like how to do that, how to make that happen before the game starts in your secondary selection?
Yeah, I took Banners and Stranglehold. Surprise, surprise. I honestly forget what my last secondary was. My book's in the other room. I should have gotten it. But it doesn't even matter, right? Like, my Stranglehold is going to be a 15. That's baked into my list decisions and the way I'm going to play the game. My Banners is going to be between a 10 and a 15. That's because he just doesn't have enough assets to mess with my backfield Banners. And, I mean, what is he taking? He could take Assassinate. He did. He got 12 on it. Other than that, Stranglehold's a little scary because he has so few assets. He took Vital Intelligence, which meant that he needed to hold midfield objectives at the start of his turn. That's also scary. I have a lot of OBSEC. I have a lot of damage. There's ways for me to shenanigan that so that he doesn't get points. So I knew that I had the secondary advantage, and I wanted to push home a strong win with the primary advantage, and that was cheaply sitting on my backfield objectives with trucks and commandos, and then using the rest of my army to kind of pressure him so that he can't set up any kind of base of operations and start scoring some points. Really what that comes down to, again, is just my baked-in secondaries of Stranglehold and Banners. Super easy, conducive to my list, and carried me to the win here.
One last thing that, I know something that's really scary for armies that mostly do damage in the fight phase, such as yours, are fight last mechanics. And I see he's got the Armor of Rust. Did you have any... Armor of Rust is the fight's last armor, for those that don't know. Did you have any specific plan to deal with this fight's last?
I was very scared of it. He mispositioned it, frankly, on a flank. He had the he was looking to give reroll 1s and Chapter Master to his Dreadnoughts for the next turn, who were all kind of on the far side, like his short table edge shooting down the flank. That meant that fight last guy wasn't in the middle of the table supporting all of his melee assets when we were punching each other. So he actually had to like interrupt me, and he only had a couple of CP. So he had to actually spend 2 CP on interrupting me. And so that didn't go super great for him. That Wolf Lord is also not the hunter. The Chaplain is the hunter, and I killed him pretty quickly. So that guy, even he was out of position, and then the following turn he moved 10, and then because he's on a Thunderwolf, and failed to charge. So that guy took 3 turns to get back in the fight, and when he did a lot of damage. Like, he bonked a war boss and a kill rig. Like, pretty awesome dude, honestly. But at that point it was too little, too late. That guy was out of the fight for too long. Forrest should have. I mean, Dreadnoughts just shooting with no rerolls is efficient enough to put the hurt on some orcs. That Wolf Lord was much better served by getting stuck in the middle of the fight.
Okay, so you just didn't really have to deal with him because of how far away he was.
Forrest mispositioned a little bit. Definitely something for next time that he's going to be fixing, probably.
All right. Well, I think that's it for day one then.
Yeah, day one felt pretty good. I had 3 relatively easy games, just very familiar with power armor, familiar with how the trades go. So eager for day 2.
All right. So it sounds like good start. So day 2 for Tyler started with round 4, Chaos Demons allied with Thousand Suns. Interesting list. Always seems like you kind of run into some Chaos lists at some point. Kind of like this. So we're starting off with a greater unclean one with the Bell, and it looks like the Exalted upgrade to be a 4-up Feel No Pain. So 1 tanky guy. Oh, we got Horticulus Slimux. He is the snail that poops out trees.
What a lad.
3 squads of 3 Nurglings, 3 squads of 8 Beasts and Nurgle. And then for the T-Suns, 2 Exalted Sorcerers, 1 just regular Sorcerer, 5 Rubiks, and then 105 reinforcement points for summoning. Tell us about this game. This looks pretty interesting.
So I love this list. I remember when this list came out, it was like doing big stuff in those fake metas, Europe, Australia, whatever they are. And I was like, this is amazing. I want to play this. How can I get 24 beasts? Because this was even before the Forge World dropped. So Tyranids and GSC were awful, and I was looking for something else to play, and I was really liking board control. This list is so cool. If you don't know what this list does, 24 Beasts of Nurgle, as it turns out, is not an easy thing to remove. They all heroically intervene. They're all like, what are they, like 5 wounds apiece at toughness 5 with a 5-up invuln, 5-up Feel No Pain. The bell rings every turn, so on a 4-up, each unit gets a guy back. It's crazy. Slimix is there. Slimix, I don't know why he's such a meme to me, but he's an absolute legend. Love this guy. He's the only way you can summon in the tree, which is one of the things that the reinforcement points might be for. It does cost points, Tanner. But when you summon in the tree gives all the Nurgle demons, so all the beasts and the big guy, advance and charge, fall back and charge, which is just such a powerful combination on this spider webbing beast situation. It's awesome. This is super cool. And then you throw in the Thousand Suns. The 3 sorcerers just whip out ludicrous numbers of mortal wounds. I'll talk about that in a sec. And then the reinforcement points make him real flexible. He can bring in, like I said, he can bring in the tree. He could also bring in Epidemius if he thinks that he's going to rack up the kill count if someone's got a lot of like cheap chaff units. Because if those Beasts of Nurgle get up to T6 and the big guy gets up to T8, that's kind of scary. Yeah. The other benefits he hands out as well would be kind of nice. He didn't end up going for that in this one. Or he can do what he ended up doing in this game. He brought in like an extra Herald of Tzeentch on disc, or I don't know, Changecaster, I guess is what they're called. I don't know anything about Chaos. They're just awesome. And he can put out a little bit more Mortal Hurt as well. So this is game 4, so we do have, like, because we're undefeated, we know our opponents aren't going to drop. We do get to spend as much time as we want the night before studying these lists, trying to figure it out. And I'm very excited. I'm texting my hive mind because, McDougal is also undefeated. We're trying to figure out matchups. And I'm like, hey, guys, what do I do about 24 Beasts of Nurgle? What's the plan? What cool strategic ideas do I bring out? And John Lennon's like, strategic? Just table him. And I was like, oh, okay. Sounds like a plan. And we walk up to the table and the guy's like, you're going to table me. And I'm like, I'm going to table you. And then we played a quick game. It turns out the Beasts of Nurgle are really durable to everything not named Devourer Gaunts or Pure Strain Gene Stealers, which are kind of the 2 heavy hitters in my list. So I was actually able to put a real hurting on this. We're playing Surround and Destroy. So that's Dawn of War with the 4 in the very corners and the 2 in the very middle, which is a really bad mission for him in this setup. Because it means that he's never getting to my back corners, and I move infinity inches. I didn't mention the list. The Drill Squad of Acolytes has the 3d6 drop the lowest charge, needing an 8. With a CP, that's a 92% success likelihood. So he has to pick a flank, because if he parks his whole army in the middle, he's going to spread too thin. I've got OBSEC. He doesn't. I'm going to grab all his objectives. He's screwed. So he picks the left flank. So his right flank is kind of wide open. So I throw some Gene Stealers at it, and it's mine. He tries to take the middle, but he doesn't have OBSEC. So I throw Gaunts up and just grab stuff. Turn 1, I had a squad of Gaunts kill like 6 beasts out of a squad, and he's like, oh, that's real bad. And then turn 2, I had another squad of Gaunts kill 6 beasts out of a squad, finish the other squad. I got stuff running around. It was a really bad matchup for him. Brian, wonderful guy, fantastic opponent. We had a really good laugh about the whole situation. He was excited to have won 3 games day 1 anyway. I'm sure he did well at the tournament. Good player, knew what was going on. Just unfortunately not really a winnable matchup for him, especially if I'm going... Actually, I think I wanted to go second. Yeah, and I had to go first. Whatever the case. Just not the matchup he was looking for. Real fun game, though. Oh, I will give him a shout-out for his Exalted Sorcerer, who I had a squad of Pure Strains run over and wrap up some Nurglings to finish them off on his turn and hold objectives and stuff. And I was like, this is great. This is super safe. You can only get 1 Sorcerer within 18. It'll be fine. That Sorcerer walks over, casts the what's the spell, Lucas, where like you roll a die for every casting value, and on a 6 it's D3.
Yeah, Baleful Devolution from Thousand
He
Suns.
casts Baleful Devolution, and I'm like, oh yeah, he's going to kill like 3 or 4 dudes. I'll pull him out of range. We'll be done. I'll have 5 or 6 dealers left. It'll be great. No, he rolled an 11 and then aced the squad in the single power.
Wow.
And I was like, oh, well, that was fun. So props for that move. Didn't see
Yeah,
that
I mean, this guy's gaming for sure, because we're at a casino and that is the casino power. That thing either does nothing or kills like 200 points in one phase. So it's absolutely hilarious.
It was 150 points of in one spell, just poof. So awesome stuff. Check that guy out if you're not if you play Chaos. I will say one other really cool tactic that I was able to employ here that if you're also a Forces player, you might like to see. The Goliath truck is a beautiful bumper car. It does really fun stuff. I parked a squad of Devil Gaunts on the objective and said, you're not going to kill this whole squad. You don't have any OBSEC. This is my objective. And sure enough, his Great Unclean One and a squad of Beasts crash in, and they kill him down to like 3 guys left. But I'm in Synapse, I'm fearless. This is my objective. Then he's got like there's a crate on the objective. Then there's the giant base of the dude. Then there's the little base of a beast, and then there's another wall. I have the 3 Gaunts fall back, and they take a mortal wound, and they do, because the Great Unclean One does that, apparently. And they go barely toe on the back edge of the objective. Then the truck drives up, charges, and bases both the beasts and the Great Unclean One. He now has no way to get to those Gaunts, and he's not getting that primary. And that was a real nail in the coffin. Okay, this game is over on points as well as table state. And that was a fun move to look out for. Transports are so much fun. I haven't had them in years, and definitely he's not going anywhere. Love the Goliath.
Yeah, purposely getting in combat and engaging your opponent's models to prevent heroics is a really, really clever way to play around those kind of powerful abilities. I've had to do that a lot. Truck, another ideal candidate for both of the trucks, Goliath and Orc, are great ways to do that just very cheaply. Everyone's transports really are, right?
Ghost Arcs with OBSEC, very fun.
Oh my god,
oh, that's spicy. Hate that thing.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Pretty irritating.
I'm just glad that I didn't have to play Necrons this weekend, man. My Necron tournament record has to be the worst of any faction I play into. It's real bad.
They're spooky robots, man. You just get scared.
I don't know. I do better into anything else that's actually S tier than I do into Necrons. So
yeah,
lucky me that we got to dodge that. Anyway, so yeah, that's about round 4 unless y'all have any other questions.
No, sounds good. That list looks really fun, and I'm glad you had a good game. Round 5, you're up against Harlequins, who've always been kind of floating around on the outside of the meta. Soaring Spite, that's the guys who can like move and shoot with no penalty, pretty much. Advance to shoot no penalty. You got a Shadow Seer, you got a Troop Master, Fang Master, that's the Twilight Fang Sky Strider. Yeah, that guy can hit really hard. 5x5 troop squads, a squad of 10 troops, a Death Jester, and then various bike squads. Looks like we got 2, 4, and then 5 transport boats. I think you guys are playing on Battle Lines, yes?
Yeah, this is Battle Lines. This is Chris Van Winkle. Chris, phenomenal guy, excellent opponent. This guy knew what was going on. Anytime you see someone playing Harlequins who's won more than like 2 games, you know they're really good at the game. And that definitely intimidates me. I have 0 prep into Harlequins because no one is playing them right now. And functionally, on paper, the matchup seems incredibly one-sided. A single squad of Devil Gaunts can table this guy in 2 to 3 turns. I'm feeling pretty good about that, but I'm also terrified because I'm sure he knows things that I don't.
I think with these guys, they got a lot of weird tricks. A lot of increase your ranges, -1 to wound aura, and also they're just flipping coins at the end of the day. So
exactly. So we're playing Battle Lines. And this is one of the games where terrain has a huge impact. I got defender, so I placed the first piece of terrain. I set a crate down next to an objective, so that objective is wide open. If he's standing on it, he's getting blasted, and that's real bad news for him. He doesn't realize how big of a deal this is, I don't think. He doesn't have a ton of reps with player placed terrain, and he put something in his backfield to hide his stuff behind. And I'm like, ooh, that's going to hurt. I put a forest on the other midfield objective, and now the entire midfield is wide open season for shooting, which means that anything he puts on any objective that's not his backfield is getting blasted. So that looks real good. And I get to go second, which, like, on paper should seal the game immediately, because it means that no one has to score any midfield primary. We'll sit on our backfield, score 5 a turn, and then round 5, I'll bust out. I'll grab the 2 midfield objectives very easily, and that will be a 10-point up on primary with me. All I got to do is compete with him on secondaries, which is pretty... I mean, like I said, my army's very good at secondaries, and I should be just fine. His entire army is very fast, but they're not infinitely fast. So on Hammer and Anvil, if he wants to stay out of Hive Guard range, which he really does, he's also not getting into my to the last, so that's easy secondary for me. This was all a great plan that went absolutely terribly. There's one more thing that went very well, and then things went terribly. He sends up a squad of bikes, and I'm blipped out, so he's not able to, get into me. But he has Twilight Pathways, which I forget about until he reminds me. I'm like, oh yeah, you have Twilight Pathways. Okay, cool. So he sends up a squad of bikes, and it's pretty clear to me what he would like to do is he would like to Twilight Pathways these bikes after the blips go away. I've mentioned this a couple times. I should spell it out if you don't.
Twilight Pathways
a lot. Well, Twilight Pathways is move again, but blips are the way that Gene Stealer cults deploy. I don't have one with me, but I have these little 32 mil tokens. For any unit that starts on the table, they start in a token instead. And at the end of my opponent's first movement phase, if they go first, or my command phase, if I go first, I pick which unit is which token. They show up within 6, and then they act normally for the rest of the game. The big thing here is that my opponent cannot end the movement phase within 9 inches of them, and I can redeploy 2 of them for 2 CP. So if you're an orc and you throw a bunch of stuff up, you have to stay 9 inches off my line, and then I can redeploy the blips, and now you have no legal charge targets, and now you're getting shot in the face. It's generally real bad. The only way you get around this mechanic is with Twilight Pathways, or with Swarm Lord, or Quicken, if that Quicken's still a thing for the next couple weeks at least. We'll see what Eldar Codex does to it. Double Move seems to be on the decline. Oh, I guess Twilight Pathways as well will be maybe gone. We'll see what happens. Anyway, so Twilight Pathways gets around this because he'll just move the bike squad another 16 inches. They're wicked quick. And then he'll be able to charge in and tag my Hive Guard.
Yeah, the reason why this works is because it's done in the psychic phase. Yes, your blips are gone at this point.
The blips are already gone. So I look at this, and then I look at his, and I'm like, oh, snap. Okay, there's a way to prevent this, which is that one of my squads of Pure Strain Gene Stealers, like I said, has a pre-game upgrade. It costs 10 points, where immediately after they show up from a blip, they can make a normal move of 9 inches, because that's how fast they are, because they're Twisted Helix. So I've got a blip in front of my Hive Guard, which are behind a wall. They're more than an inch behind the wall, so he can't tag them from the outside, but there's we're playing on the Gothic Cathedral. I played every game on Gothic Cathedral after round 1, by the way. I think Lukas did as well. Mm-hmm. It's just what we play on at higher tables because it's all the printed stuff. There's a giant archway hole that fits a 60 millimeter bike base in the middle there. So he's going to be able to go right through that and tag the Hive Guard. So I could just put a bunch of Gene Stealers there, block it up. I know I've done the math. There's no way in heck that the bike guys are going to get through there. So that would be a sufficient solution. I will probably trade the Stealers for the bikes, but then I look at the board state. And this is where you've got to always be looking for the out-of-the-box plays here. I noticed that he's got his Shadow Seer has a 9-inch bubble or whatever of minus 6-inch range. So the Hive Guard are going to be 30-inch range if they want to target anything outside of that one bike squad that's going forward. And he has parked his entire army 35 inches away from the Hive Guard so that I cannot move and fire and hit them. So what I'm hearing is, I don't care if he tags the Hive Guard. I've got bikes in the way, so he can't literally charge them, so they're going to be fine. All he can do is tag them. If he tags them, it is to no detriment to me, and I've got Devil Gaunts who will erase the bikes immediately. So I let him have it, which he's kind of, I think he may have been thinking that I just didn't realize how it was all going to shake out, but I see that. I give him a couple of squads of Pure Strain so he can throw his shots into them. He doesn't do much. He kills like one Pure Strain from each squad, and they're now what I think is well positioned. They're not, but it looks good to me. And he then charges in, kills the bikes, tags the Hive Guard, and then realizes what has happened, and I remove the bikes from the table. I then go into the squad of Pure Strains to try to kill a squad of his bikes. Now, as a reminder, the master plan here is no one holds the midfield all game. I'm not even going to put any crap units on it. I don't care. I don't need to trade him. And then turn 5, I go up 10 on primary. This goes terribly wrong because I have my squad of Pure Strains charge his squad of bikes. I don't get Might from Beyond off, so they're down in attack. That's fine. They go into the bikes, and they kill 3 of the 4 of them. So there's 1 bike left, and then that bike is able to use Curtain Fall, which I just entirely forgotten about because I haven't played Harlequins in forever, which allows him to, it's kind of like Onslaught, where instead of consolidating, he gets to make a normal move. But unlike Onslaught, there's no restrictions on it. He does, like, in order to get, not Onslaught. What am I talking about? I'm talking about Overrun. In order to use Overrun as a Tyrannid, there has to be no one within 3 inches, so no one you could consolidate into. He doesn't care. There's a full squad of Gene Stealers bearing down on this guy. He killed maybe 1 of them back. He doesn't care. He moves 16 inches onto a midfield objective. So now he's holding 2, and I'm holding 1, and that's a 15 for him on turn 2.
Slippery little Harlequins.
Yeah, and I am terrified. That is real bad. Yeah, not a good time. So I'm not playing on the back foot for like the entire game to get back into this. I pull off some clever stuff. The end of this game unfortunately, it got a little bit heated. There were some questions about where exactly the line of intent is. I don't want to get too into it. At the end of the day, I think I probably made the wrong move here. The more I think about it, I like his case. I should probably have resigned. I end up pulling out a 1 point in game here. Not a huge fan of how I ended up doing that. But at the end of the day, hey, my apologies, Chris. You were a fantastic opponent. And we had a like up until the very end, thoroughly enjoyed this guy. He's fantastic. I really hope I get to play him again because he's a really brilliant mind in this game. Similarly, I'm pretty sure he crushed his last round opponent, going 5-1 at LVO. Awesome for him. He did great. If you know this guy, you should play him more. He's awesome. So that was round 5. And we're going to hold off on round 6 until hearing about a bit of Lucas's day 2.
Yeah. Before we transition to Lucas real quick, sorry. Mm-hmm. Getting a little message from up top. If you have not, please subscribe to our YouTube at some point so that you get notifications about when we're live, as well as other shows on the Best in Faction Network.
Yeah, the best thing about the new Best in Tabletop kind of scenario here is it's not just us doing podcasts, right? We've got content for basically everyone. And for everyone, we are hoping that there's multiple shows that you like because we just have a ton of stuff coming out. So keep your eyes and ears open over the course of the next week for more shows. And there's no better way to do that than subscribing to the YouTube channel so you can stay up to date with everything that we're doing.
Yeah, we'll all be on separate podcast feeds eventually, but everything is always going to be on this YouTube. So this is your one-stop shop if you want to get all of the content all the time. Subscribe, hit the bell, all the good stuff, like the video. And let's move on to day 2.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So Lucas, day 2, round 4, we are back to Surround and Destroy. You went up against 1,000 Suns running a mixed cult of magic and duplicity.
Yep.
So I know you're very familiar with 1,000 Suns. This list had Armon, Infernal Master with the Orrery and the redeploy, an Exalted Sorcerer, 5 squads of 4 Rubrics with Flamers, 14 Zangors, 10 Scarab Occults, 7 Spawn, and 2 Volcon Contemptors.
Yeah, so this matchup, in theory, is really, really favorable for me. And I will happily admit that I got super lucky to win this game. I misplayed constantly, and it really was the matchup being so Orcs' favorite that ended up carrying it for me. The end of the game, let's see here.
Could you explain why it's a favorable matchup real quick?
Yeah, T-Suns rely on standing in cover and using the -1 damage stratagem from shooting attacks to stay alive. I have no shooting attacks, and I don't care about cover. The other thing is T-Suns have difficulty initiating fights because all of their assets are so expensive, and and you know, it's difficult for them to get points. Or, I mean, it's not difficult for them to get points, but it's difficult for them to initiate the fight. Orcs are really, really fast and can initiate the fight. So I have the advantage of I can hit him in multiple places. I can put stuff all over his backfield. I can bully him off of the midfield objectives even easier than I can normally. I mean, my list is designed to do that. That being said, it's exceptionally easy against Thousand Suns because they have to stay so far back. So that's the real reason why the list is so the matchup is so Orcs favored. He has some good tools. 6 objective missions are pretty easy for Mutate Landscape. That's a Thousand Suns objective where you cast it on each objective on a 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And you get 3 points for every different cast on a different objective. So he ended up getting 9 on that. He could have easily gotten 12. That's a really good tool. Also, he's pretty likely to get 12 to 15 on Assassinate because my list gives that up. So he had some pretty good options. It's just a matter of I bullied him off the primary for long enough. He basically made his breakout turn 1 turn too late to try to win the game. It ended up being a 93-84 win for me. The guy's name is Taroxe El Rojo. He's from Spain. Really cool guy. He placed really highly in the ITC, like 40th or 50th or something like that. So this guy definitely knew what was up. And I was very nervous leaving that game because I was like, wow, I definitely could have lost that. He was a better player than me, and I misplayed it, so I totally should have, honestly. But yeah, it was a cool game overall. Duplicity and Magic for Thousand Suns, they've seen some kind of hits recently, just in terms of the other codexes that are coming up. But at the end of the day, people that stick by Thousand Suns really know the codex. And if you know all the tricks you can do with them, they are really powerful. So they have a lot of OBSEC. They have some weird mobility tricks. They have great scoring. Great scoring that corresponds with defensive play. So as long as you're not getting Zerg rushed, like by Orcs, you can do really well with Thousand Suns. So great ups to Taroxe. He was an awesome opponent. And yeah, that's kind of the gist of that game. Questions about this game, Nick, or should we move to
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned you made a mistake. Like, what was the big mistake that you made, or I guess mistakes that you made? How did you correct it?
The list is Goth Pressure, right? And I'm a little too timid to really adopt that title in full. I don't like putting my whole army out in the midfield to be shot, even though that's kind of what the list does. Sometimes I'm a little bit too scared of my opponent. He had a lot of tools for doing damage to me. I thought I could mitigate those by hiding like partially behind terrain, and all I really did was ended up getting shot by a little bit less than I otherwise would have, but I was super far back. So what I should have just done was crammed my whole army into the midfield, said, you're going to do some devastating damage, but then when I connect, it's going to be absolutely painful, and I'm going to win the game from there. I basically, to sum that up in just a sentence, I undercommitted on my first movement phase. I should have been more aggressive, and I was not. So that almost lost me the game. But I ended up pulling it out just because I had enough stuff in his DZ on turn 2 instead of turn 1 that he fell behind in points.
Yeah, this is also where practice matters a lot, because I know you've had a lot of previous practice into Thousand Suns. So
yeah, I know how all the profiles work. I know he has powerful counterpunch units that I just need to either mitigate or ignore. The spawn ended up doing some decent damage, but one weakness of Taroxe's list, most Thousand Suns I've played against in the past have like 10 or 11 CP. He has like 6. And Thousand Suns have amazing stratagems. So he ran out by turn 2, and then he was having to reroll casts and stuff with his 1 that he got every turn. So he was out of CP really fast, and I took advantage of that.
Cool. Good job recognizing. Sorry, Tyler.
It makes sense that you would know a lot about Thousand Suns, given that you went undefeated at a major with them, like just a couple of months ago.
2-0, baby. 2-0 with the Nationals.
You haven't mentioned anything much about command points. I realize that's kind of a pretty central facet of your list. What is your CP count at the start of the game?
Yeah, I start off with 4 coward points.
Coward points.
And yeah, exactly. 4 coward points. My previous list had 3, so we're going up in the world. 33% increase, baby. So yeah, I start with 4 command points, and given how much this game is about midfield control and fighting over those midfield objectives and bullying your opponent off of them, I basically bank those for interrupts and fights on death with Orc characters that haven't fought yet. That ends up serving me super well. I basically don't use anything else. Occasionally I'll use +1 damage on Mega Knobs. That's 2 CP. but it's not super duper necessary. The more important stuff is making sure your characters can connect as many times as they can. And if your opponent doesn't have fights last and or fails to cast it, you'll bet that in a second, or it denies. Yeah, making sure you have CP for an interrupt so you can just smash your opponent's units, because every single orc unit that's in your army does insane amount of melee damage. So worth saving CP for that.
Yeah, Lucas gets really mad at me when I tell him to save CP for ramming speed, but that strategem's very fun. So
ramming speed is okay. Yeah, there's a couple situational ones. +1 damage on Mega Knobs, ramming speed. Sometimes CPing advances. Like I've CP'd commando advances before. That's won me games. So the CPing advance rolls is something you need to think hard about. Which basically you're thinking, how many CP do I need for my opponent's next turn? Very often it's 4. So on turn 1, you do have the ability to command point a commando advance because you'll be starting that turn with 5. So that is something I've done in the past.
And that's something that's pretty cool because, like, I've played your list, you know. I played it at a major, the major you were not able to go to, sadly, because I wanted to test it out. And I've also played Necrons, where I start with like 13 CP. And there are some games where you're like, oh, I got 13 CP. I can just blast through this. And by turn 3, you have 2. And then the game becomes a lot tighter. So playing lists where you're kind of forced to have only 4 or 3 to start with, it's kind of nice because you know, all right, I need to save 4. And I can budget like 1 a turn. It kind of teaches you about budgeting CP, which is a pretty important tool. Because blasting through your CP can lose you the game on those important times. So like turn 3, turn 4.
Yeah, you're on a clock at the end of the day, so don't worry yourself into a mental hole of how many CP do I need for my, on turn 4 when it's turn 1. But just think about your opponent's next turn. You need to have an interrupt in the bank because they're going to be fighting you in the midfield. You should probably have a fight on death banked because they're probably going to try to kill your characters. That's all you need. Save 4 CP. The rest of it is, fair game.
Mm-hmm. All right. So moving on to round 5. Your first battle lines, you went up against Twisted Helix Gene Stealer Cults. And this is mono Gene Stealer Cults. There's no forces involved here. We had a Biophagus. We had a Sanctus, 2 Patriarchs, a Kellermorph, a Primus, 3 squads of 10 Pure Strain Gene Stealers, 3 squads of 5 Acolytes. We got one of like the 10-man Acolyte blob with Hand Flamers, another 10-man blob with some flamers and rock drills, 15 metamorphs, 2 squads of 4 jackals, and 2 Goliath trucks. Looks like a lot of little, like, kind of techie squads in here.
Quick clarifying question. Which version of the Sanctus was he taking, Lucas?
The sniper one. The one that applies crossfire. That was good. That was scary. It's not anticipating that.
Yeah. So I know you had like 200 games of practice into Gene Stealer Cults before LVO. So do you listen how this game goes? How this game
going? I was mostly practicing against Rusted Claw shooting-oriented builds, so I knew what Crossfire was. I was aware that one guy with a demo charge can kill a kill rig. But yeah, so that did still happen, even though he's not Rusted Claw. He did throw a couple of demo charges and blow up my kill rig. That's not super important though. Let's talk about macro, how this game's going to go and how I'm going to win it. I played against TJ Lanigan. He was an awesome dude. He played super clean, fun game. We immediately, talked about how we were going to play by intent and how we were going to help each other out because, we're tired. It's day 2. It's round 5. Let's just have a fun, nice game. So we were just kind of helping each other out, talking about distances and all that kind of thing. He was a great opponent.
Good.
He was a little bit too timid of the amount of damage I could do. You need to respect the amount of distance orcs can cover and the damage they can do in melee, but if you let them bully off of you off of your back battle line's objective, you're probably going to lose the game. And he was a little bit too scared of me, and what that ended up resulting in was he got 0 for the first 3 turns on primary. That's not a recipe for success. Like, you can admit that, I'm going to lose early game and make a comeback late game, but that can't lead to you getting 0 points for the first 3 turns of the game. That's not good. So I kept throwing little itty bitty units to kill 5 acolytes that were on his home field objective. He kept being like, I can't commit anything. And what that ended up doing was, in the end game, he killed my entire army in like the last 2 turns of the game. But I had racked up multiple 15s and he had racked up multiple 0s. and I already had a secondary advantage, just because of I took banners and stranglehold, and I was getting 3s on both of those for the first 3 or 4 turns. So, I think TJ had a little bit more agency than he thought he had in influencing the board state. I think he could have ran in and did a lot of damage. Even if it didn't instantly result in a point swing, it would have at least brought the tempo back in his favor. As it was, he let me dictate basically every engagement, and that meant that I ended up winning the game. I also got pretty lucky because he has like 5 units that arrive from reserve and launch an 8-inch charge, and he landed with like 1 of them. So that's an unfortunate reality for Genestealer cults that you just have to be aware of if you're playing GSC. Is sometimes you just fail your charges and your super squishy guys get picked up. And it turns out that orcs can do that. Those Flamer Meganobs put in work. Yeah, those guys are awesome.
And this is something I mentioned before we even actually started the podcast about that game. Were you just kind of hoping he wouldn't land those 8-inch charges, or did you have a plan in mind?
I had a plan. The most important thing is you can't let them get freebies. There's 2 ways to prevent them getting freebies. Either you block Return to the Shadows plays with transport, like layering your units inside of a transport. That's one way to block Return to the Shadows. Keeping a character nearby a unit, either with the character in front or the unit in front, it doesn't super duper matter, as long as they're wholly within 6 inches of each other to block Return to the Shadows.
Yeah, and I should mention real quick for those who don't know.
Yeah, we should talk about what Return to the Shadows.
Yeah, Return to the Shadows, because this is new stratagem, yes.
Right. TJ's list has some shooting, and it was honestly pretty scary in the first couple turns. But the gist of his list is melee. Twisted Helix is all about melee. There is a 1 CP Genestealer cult stratagem that after at the end of the movement phase, or after you make a consolidate move, you can 1 CP pick that unit up off the table and put it in reserves as long as it's more than 6 inches from enemy models. So did I get that all right, Tyler? Is there anything I missed?
It's not at the end of the movement phase. It's just instead of moving or instead of consolidating.
Okay. Instead of moving or consolidating, all those other conditions, you can pick a unit up and put it in reserve. So the scary thing is he shows up outside of 8. He lands an 8-inch charge. He kills a unit at Orc Boys. He's outside of 6, 1 CP. Do that all again next turn.
Well, if he does that again, he has to come in next turn, and he comes in outside of 9, not 8. It's a regular deep strike. It no longer has the underground shenanigans. No coming in at 8, no coming in at 6, no 3d6 charge, no +1 attack.
But the point is the unit is still alive, and it's a threat for the next turn. I can't let it be a threat for the next turn because there's still a good chance he lands the 9-inch charge, and even if he doesn't, he can be safe somewhere. So I need to prevent.
Come in like Rod or something too. Yeah.
Yep. Exactly. Yeah. So I have to prevent that. So the ways for preventing that I was mentioning: putting units inside of transports, keeping characters or / units nearby each other, wholly within 6 of each other, or making sure the unit is going to hit as a character via screening, because orc characters have fight on death. Like acolytes will kill a beast boss. Sure, that's fine with me. 2 CP fight on death kills the whole unit basically. So that's the idea there. It ended up being super nice because TJ failed all of his charges. So then the Flamer Meganobs went whoosh and killed everything, and then charges, and it just did not go super well for him. But yeah, that's the way you protect yourself against GSC, just on a surface level. While the difficult part is you have to do that while you're also pressuring his backfield objective, and that's just micromanaging in 1 turn in advance what unit is going to go and mess with his backfield objective next turn.
Yeah, it's always important to watch where your opponent could deep strike in next turn if they have deep strikers, and with GSC especially, because they got that extra little inch that can come within. So good work. And thanks for explaining that.
Yep.
Yeah. So at the end of round 5, we're both 5-0, feeling real great. We've both hit our marks on what we're looking for. And round 6, I have to play into an absolute buffoon of a man, fielding orcs. Lukas and I did get to play the mirror, which we have practiced, and we got to play it on the Scouring on round 6.
Which was a mission we played before. Like on TTS, we played it a week ago, right?
Yeah. So let me break down these lists. Nah, I'm kidding. We already did that.
Yeah, I was absolutely elated. Like I said, the end of the last game was super tense, and to go from that to I get to play my buddy Lukas, and we'll shake it out, and one of us is going 6-0. I was about as excited as I could possibly be, because regardless of the outcome of this game, amazing.
Yeah. I was excited about getting to play Tyler. It's a cool matchup.
I'm interrupting now. This is the part I'm going to interrupt. After all the awesome content that's happened, this is where I'm interrupting. Because I want to hear more about this, because I was part of many people that presumed you guys would both be upset about this situation. And I would love it if you guys would both talk about that, because you play each other in bad situations all the time. Like, you guys have bad luck for this. You have eliminated each other from doing well at tournaments many times. Yep. Chuck and I have this as well. Mitch and I have this as well. Like, I get it. But, like, you're both 5-0 at the biggest tournament you've ever gone to, and you find out you have to play your friend in round 6. I want to hear more about that before we continue on. Yeah, sorry to interrupt, sort of.
Yeah, no, sure, yeah. It sucked that one of us was going to get eliminated, but there's the flip side of that coin, that one of us is making it to at least the shadow round, right? So at the end of the day, even if I lose this game, I am super happy that my best friend is making it to the shadow round, right? At least. So that's nice, like, consolation present in case things don't go my way in this game. That being said, it is absolutely hilarious that Tyler and I play at like every big tournament we go to. It's pretty dumb.
It's almost always the last round.
Yeah, like what was that, Tyler? There was like 80 undefeated people? No, there was 40 undefeated people at that point, basically. Like 40.
No, it's gonna be less than that, right? Because there were 10 undefeated going into the shadow round, so there were 20 going into round 6.
Okay, so it was like a 1 in 19 that I played against you.
Yeah, it's not crazy odds, but yeah, we played on stream at the top table at the RTT at Colin's house. We've played at top tables at RTTs elsewhere where no one gets to win the tournament because our games are too close. We played at Slashmas. Yeah, we run into each other fairly often, and hilariously in the past, the matchup up until this time, actually I guess kind of up until last time, but for a while the matchup was super one-sided because Lucas's 120 orcs and 18 smasher guns, whatever that nonsense was, just annihilated me. There was no play into that at all whatsoever. It was the only thing that I couldn't beat, and I had to keep playing into it, and that was annoying. And now the tables have sort of turned where the matchup looks very in my favor, but we'll talk about the game in detail because this was a really tight one with some really interesting stuff. Even if the final score doesn't really look like that, I similarly agree with Lucas. There's no one I would rather play round 6. Because we're a team. Even if he's going to be a traitor and claim a different team name than the OGs, we're doing it for you, Baze. He's still on my team where it counts, and one of us going 6-0 is like the only goal was don't draw.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and we had already hit our goals, right? Our goal we're basically 4-2 each, and we both exceeded that, so we were happy where we were. All right.
So,
the scouring.
Yeah.
Scouring.
I'm so glad this mission is fixed.
What a mission.
So we had played this mission before, and if I can recap that practice game as quickly as possible, Lucas ran at me full speed. I played okay. Lost basically my entire army except for a single squad of Devil Gaunts, and then that single squad of Devil Gaunts tabled him.
Yeah, that's more or less true. Yep.
Yeah. So Lucas knows going in, he can't let that happen. And basically, who went? Did you go first? I have it written down.
I went first. Yep.
You went first. No, you went first. And I am ecstatic about getting to go second on the scouring, because Lucas cannot get to me in one turn. He knows this. It'll take him 2 turns, so I'll get to set up a screen between turns 1 and turn 2. And like in that Battle Lines game, the scouring is a really hard objective to score primary on. So if I get an end of game 15, I'm looking real good. So that's going great. We set up terrain. I think the terrain setup is fairly balanced. It's pretty normal stuff. We both have pretty secure, very backfields, and the midfield is pretty open with some ways to hide, because you can't actually hide on objectives in the scouring basically at all. So it looks pretty even.
One thing that happened that was pretty interesting, Tyler, was you dropped that forest kind of at the front of your table half in the middle. And then I did the same thing, just 4 inches back from that. What was your thinking there? Because obviously in a zero-sum game like 40K, you generally don't want the same... What your opponent wants isn't what you want, right? So I was interested that we were both putting a forest in the middle. Like, I wanted a forest there, and you wanted a forest there. What was your thinking? And then I'll explain mine.
I'm going to guess that your thinking has to do with Hive Guard. My thinking was, I don't like the forest, the dense. I don't care about that. What I care about is that that's -2 to move, and you're going to be trying to get to that center objective. So if I can slow you down even a little bit, because the kill rigs are affected by it, the trucks are affected by it, obviously the guys on foot are affected by it. It's just the Storm Boys that aren't. That's a problem. And then you're like, oh, but Tyler, don't you want to charge him? Well, GSC doesn't care about that because we have 1 CP tunnel networks to ignore Overwatch and ignore charge mods given by a piece of terrain that the opponent is standing on. So if Lukas wants to park like a squad of Mega Knobs there, I will happily throw Pure Strains into them, ignore the -2 to charge, not get Flame or Overwatched. And that means we'll have a pretty wide open center. I was concerned about Lukas putting a giant blocker dead center in the table and being able to have a full launching off point from there where I wouldn't be able to get to him with all my gaunts and a lot of my line of sight shooting. So that was my thought process. Why did you want a forest there?
You guessed correctly. It was Hive Guard related. I don't like those guys very much. Every unit in Tyler's army is hyper lethal into the kind of stuff that I'm fielding, right? If the Devil Gants ever connect, just like if they get all the buffs and they connect, it's devastating. The Hive Guard aren't devastating, but over the course of like 3 turns, they're pretty crippling. There's 2 squads of Devil Gants, honestly. There's 2 squads of Devil Gants, so I have to worry about them twice, is what I meant to say there. There's 2 squads of Gene Stealers. They're super lethal, and they're fast enough that I basically can't deal with them. I just have to do my standard practice for making sure he's not returning to the shadows. Every unit in his army is super scary. So going into this game, I was irritated that Tyler went second because he's going to get a lot of points at the end. But it was at least nice that I could set up in the midfield and not have to worry about him move blocking me super far back. So all I did on turn 1 was I put some banners up. I took banners in this mission too. I put some banners up. I kind of parked myself in the midfield.
Can we go over secondaries here? Because this was actually really interesting. So the last time that Lukas and I played this mission, I took While We Stand, like I basically always do, and he killed all 3 of them, and that very rarely happens. So I start asking myself questions like, how is he thinking? How are we going to play this game? Because Lukas probably wants to full rush me, so how can I punish him for that? Well, let's drop While We Stand, and I'll grab Assassinate instead. I don't like taking Assassinate, because your opponent can play around it. But my thinking is, if Lukas rushes me, I'll get pretty easy Assassinate, and if he doesn't rush me and I don't get Assassinate, now my end of game sweep is going to be huge, and if he's not applying pressure, I'm looking real good. But if Lukas takes Secondaries designed to sit back, if he takes banners, which is what I was kind of concerned that he was going to take, if he takes banners and Stranglehold instead of, I figured he would take Stranglehold, it's the Scouring. If he takes banners and Stranglehold, he gets to sit back. Maybe there's play there, and obviously we're picking secondaries. I don't know who's going first. So if he takes banners and he takes Stranglehold and he gets to go second and he sits back, I'm in trouble. I bet on him taking more aggressive secondaries and going for me instead and going to punish that, which didn't end up working out because Lukas did take those defensive secondaries. So I have Engage, Rod, and Assassinate. Lukas has Stranglehold, banners, and no prisoners. So Lukas sort of wins that game and has the ability to sit back, but then he goes first.
So it was kind of an interesting mix of I got the secondary win in terms of the game theory, but you had the 15 in the bank in theory just by going second. And I have to
better to be lucky than good at this game every single time.
Yeah, this is interesting because usually the picking secondaries reveal at the same time thing. When I first saw the packet, I was like, oh, cool, they're going for some game theory-esque, like you don't know, it's going to be a different game every time. It was less of that after a while because people just built secondaries into their list, so people kind of knew what they were taking going in. This was one game where me not knowing what Tyler was going to take had a huge impact on how I played the game and how I picked my secondaries, and vice versa for Tyler, right? Like I came out ahead because he took secondaries that he assumed I was going to take one set of secondaries and picked his secondaries as a result. I didn't take those secondaries, so I ended up kind of in an advantage that way.
Honestly, Lukas, I think this is the only time this tournament when I should not have told you my third secondary. GSC have a 1 CP strat to not tell you a secondary, and if I said I have either To the Last or Assassinate, obviously it's written down, I can't change it later, and don't tell you, I think that would have been fun. I think I should have done that.
That genuinely would have been pretty cool. Yeah, that's true.
When are you supposed to reveal that?
You reveal it when you score it, which both Assassinate and To the Last are scored at the end of the game.
That's wild. Holy cow.
Right? So if I'm like, hey, Lucas, throw your characters at me, they might give me free points. But if you don't, that might give me free points. Like,
that's super wild, actually.
Yeah.
Because don't the Grey Knights or Teesons have a way to switch your secondary? But it's like
Grey Knights can change it. Dark Angels can also hide it. But neither of those are quite as strong because the Dark Angel secondaries are pretty telegraphed usually. Yeah. And the Grey Knight ones are so good anyway that it usually doesn't super matter. But again, it's a change. Like I'm pretty sure it's like change after reveal, but before the first battle round or something like that.
Yeah, so like if you end up in a game theory scenario where like, oh crap, my opponent won the game theory war of what secondaries to take, I swap it now.
Yeah. That's very interesting though. I didn't know you guys had that.
It's tricksy. Okay, so Lucas, as he said, takes his turn 1. Honestly, Lucas looked at the game theory and was like, wait a second, do I just sit in my DZ? Or do I walk up banner twice and just hold back? Do I move? And man, I was salivating when he was considering that.
Yeah. The thing is, if I didn't have to put something in the middle to get Stranglehold, I would have done that. Mm-hmm. But that stuff's getting picked up by Hiveguard anyway, so I may as well put the rest of my army in a position to capitalize on the fact that Hiveguard can't kill literally everything in my army. They can kill half of it. They can't kill
exactly. Yeah.
So yeah, I rushed up, I grabbed Stranglehold, and I said, you're going to have to start playing the game with me right now or I'm going to get a primary advantage. And Scouring is a traditionally very low-scoring mission, so you don't want me to get a primary advantage. So come play the game with me. How did you respond?
I cannot let Lucas get a 15. If Lucas gets a 15 top 1, top 2, I mean, that's just kind of game. I can't. And more importantly, what I cannot do under any circumstances is let him just run at me from there. Because he is close enough at this point that he's going to start wogging next turn. He's going to be advancing and charging and getting out of I'm getting tabled if I don't do anything. So I have to act immediately. And I think that overall, with one small exception, I acted very well. I send my Scout Move Pure Strange Gene Stealers up. He's got Commandos and Storm Boys and a Beast Boss on an objective. And I rush up there. I kill the Commandos. I kill the Storm Boys, to almost. There's a little bit left. But enough that I tear down his banner, because I got more models on there than he does, and he doesn't have any OPSEC. I move block the Beast Boss. I move block the truck. I actually don't move block the truck properly. Lucas totally baited me. I tagged the truck and didn't base it. So he got 6 extra inches of movement, but that didn't really matter. But it was annoying, but it's a good play on Lucas's part there. But that's all move blocked functionally. So that's one flank that's stuck in place. Lucas has killed 2 of my bikes with his Whir Tower because I slightly misdeployed them because I didn't think that was the thing that would happen. So I only have 3 bikes left. They blitz up. They auto advance 6. So they go 21 inches, -2 for the forest probably. And they string out and they move block a bunch. And then there's a building. So there's just a little bit of room left that I have to block. And I had Metabolic Overdrive. That's a double move strategy Tyranids have. The squad of Sky Slashers up. And they block off that side of the wall. So the entire board is blocked off. It's Stealers, it's bikes, it's Sky Slashers, and they're all posted up 3 inches back off of the kill rigs because the kill rigs can heroic because they're characters. So that's real scary. And it is at this point that I make a game-losing mistake, and things spiral quickly. Lucas has put his truck full of Mega Knobs just millimeter towed onto that center objective for stranglehold purposes, and I don't like this truck full of Mega Knobs. They're very scary. They drive very fast. They shoot a lot of stuff. I don't want that. So I'm thinking, I've got 2 volleys of Hiveguard in the tank. I'm going to put them into the truck. I'm going to put them into the Mega Knobs. They're going to go away. Everything's going to be great. And I look at this, and I'm like, well, I guess if the truck explodes, that could be a problem. But it's not going to explode. It's 1 in 6. What's the problem? Let me go ahead and shoot. And I shoot at the truck, and I kill the truck, and Lucas rolls a 6, and the truck explodes. And then, Lucas rolls a 5 for his D3 mortal wound, so it kills the Sky Slasher base. So there is a 40 millimeter wide hole in my move block.
This is a secret that'll help us out later.
And this single dude dies, and I passed my morale check, so it's literally a single Sky Slasher base has been removed from play, and immediately everything is in ruin.
Let's explain why that's so important, right?
Yeah.
Your move block is now 2 Sky Slashers, 3 Jackals, and 8 remaining Gene Stealers. Okay, I can pick up those Gene Stealers with Flamers, that's fine. The Jackals and the Sky Slashers aren't scary in melee. So all I'm doing with my next turn is I'm calling the Wah, but the important thing is Beast Snaggers are getting out of a transport. They're advancing through that little 40mm hole that the explosion left me, and I'm using a CP there if I need to because it's super important. They'll end up in a forest, so it'll be -2 to charge, or -2 to move through. That's totally fine. They're just trying to get all the distance they can. Then when I charge in, I'm spending 1 to ignore charge modifiers from the Orc strat, Tide of Muscle. So those guys are going as far into Tyler's DZ as is humanly possible. Just barely ending the charge within 1 inch of his Sky Slashers. So then, obviously, I have a million units right in front of the Sky Slashers and Jackals. They die. Activate another CP to pile in and consolidate Beast Snag 6 inches. All of a sudden, those guys go from the midfield objective to Tyler's literal back short board edge in 1 turn with the use of some CP, tagging a unit of Devil Gants and the Hive Guard. Obviously, this is important for damage purposes, but what does it put Tyler down to? He's got 1 squad of Devil Gants that can shoot me, and he's got 1 squad of Gene Stealers and a truck, and he's got a squad of Acolytes coming in from Deep Strike. So I brought his threat count from 5 down to 3. That's a humongous change in how much damage he's going to do to me next turn, and now he's out of move blocking stuff. So everything that I have and that's in the midfield is now connecting with him next turn, and he's only got 3 assets to solve the problem. That's probably the deciding point in the game, because if I don't manage to tag those Hive Guard, if the truck doesn't blow up, all of a sudden I'm in a scary spot because he gets to use 5 assets against me next turn and my army goes away. As it was, he got to use 3 assets against me, and I gave you some really tough choices with what was available to shoot at, right? Like what did you shoot at with those 3 assets? Because you only had a couple things to activate with, and it's super important that they each, hit their target as efficiently as possible. So how'd you do that?
Yeah, so I've just got a couple things. I've also got the Acolytes that come in from reserve turn 2, which is nice. Did I even bring them in? Or did I hold them for
they're rotted in my backfield. The 5 Acolytes?
No, the drill squad. Did they go into that beast? Oh, they went into the commandos. That was turn 2.
That was on turn 2.
Yeah, okay. So I look at this and I am in panic mode because this is my absolute worst nightmare situation that has happened. Yeah, so what do I even do? I do double tap the Hive Guard and kill the Mega Knobs down to like 1 or 2 guys or whatever. That's annoying. So they're a problem. Everything's a problem.
This is on the bottom of 2, right? So your Hive Guard and your squad of Devil Gants is tagged. You've just got the lighter skin squad of Devil Gants on the flank.
Yep.
You've got a squad coming in from reserve that hits commandos, and you've got those Gene Stealers that came out of the truck because I killed your truck.
Okay, so he
was inside.
Oh yeah, because you made that all so because in addition to this midfield play, that's why I was getting confused, because I was thinking there was a turn in the middle there, which there couldn't have been. The Mega Boss gets out of the truck. The Mega Knobs cannot fit in front of the truck, so they have to get out backwards with his cute little moving up 6, but the Mega Boss does. And he runs up along with... What goes with him?
There's just a couple Storm Boys fell back.
Oh yeah, the Storm Boys that fell back. They don't end up actually charging. So he and does the truck charge?
No, it fell back onto the objective.
So it's just him into the Goliath?
Yep. He manages with some other psychic phase and shooting damage to kill that truck.
He kills the Goliath.
Yep. And Tyler just pops out a couple inches. He's on the objective. I don't really care. It's a hold 2 mission, and I'm on his other own field objective. So he's on 1. He's not getting any points. That's fine with me.
Well, you're forgetting about Tyler,
Yeah, you did spend 1 CP to blow up that truck, which did a ton of mortals to my army. Very importantly, putting that Mega Boss down to 4 wounds. You'll remember from my army recap army summary at the beginning that this guy is -1 to wound, 1 up armor, 4 up invuln, T6.
Yeah.
So Pure Strain Gene Stealers, one of the scariest melee units in the game, wound him on 6s. So I'm like, let's go. He's at 4 wounds. Tyler's got not 4. He's got 8 Gene Stealers left. The math says I take 3.5 wounds, And then Tyler has no fallback in charge, so his Gene Stealers are tied up. Now he's down to 2 assets to deal with all of my stuff, and then the game is like over.
Yeah, if Lukas gets in and these Pure Strains are not doing anything next turn other than eventually killing the boss, like it's like I would shake hands at that point, basically.
Right, yeah. So I'm like, the risk is worth it. This boss is probably dead next turn to anyway to Mortal Wounds. I'm gonna pile into these Gene Stealers. Tyler rolls like 10% better than average. Whatever, my Mega Boss dies. Very sad. So yeah, he's still got the 3 assets. It was a risk worth taking. So then what happened in your turn 2,
okay,
right?
So
let's talk about where all those assets go.
Yeah, so Lukas has also gotten the second squad of Beast Nagas out of the truck or out of the kill rig, and they've also slingshotted around. I had pre-measured this, so they weren't going to be tagging anything, but they would be able to get on the objective, which in my initial plan, he's not going to bother doing. There's no reason for him to feed me that unit. But they're there now, and I have to deal with them. And I have to deal with them immediately because they will, like, yeah, that I have to prevent Lukas from getting a 15. That is number 1 priority. Lukas cannot score primary points here. So I auto advance the Pure Strain 6, so they go 15. They go from one home objective where they've just killed the boss all the way down to the other one. So they're going to go into them. The Acolytes Deep Strike in the back corner to charge the commandos. They got an 8-inch on 3 dice. If they make this, they'll tear down that banner, and they will hold that objective. So that'll be mine. So that's that. That's 1 unit. That's 2 units. The Gaunts have to clear him off of my other home field objective by killing the truck. I love that. Of all the threats, I'm like, Devil Gaunts have to go into the truck, but that's the math. They have to.
That was part of my strategy, right? Is the Devil Gants are like probably the scariest unit in the army. Keep things that the Devil Gants want to shoot into away from them. So the things they had to shoot that turn were like 2 wounded Mega Knobs and a wounded truck. It was like, okay, like these things are important to kill, and he has to kill them. Otherwise, my next turn is going to be devastating because there's flamer guys in that truck. He has to kill those. That's going to be devastating, but it's not exactly what he wants to shoot at. He wants to shoot at some Snagas. He wants to shoot at some Storm Boys, but they're not going to give him those targets, right? He's going to have to shoot at some scrap and devote his whole turn to that. So he does. He has to.
Yeah. This was also where the fact that I hadn't move blocked that truck correctly becomes a really big deal. Because if none of that happens, that entire quadrant is so safe. Yep. And things feel a lot better. But yeah, so I kill the truck. I kill one of the Mega Knobs, I think. I leave the other one at like full or 2 wounds or something.
At 1 wound, yep.
At 1 wound, gotcha. And then the Steelers rush over. And then, yeah, so that's my 3 assets. The Steelers have to go after the Snagas. The Gaunts have to kill the truck and the Mega Knobs. And the Acolytes have to go after the Commandos. And if this all works, I'm still in this game. Yep. Things look okay. I've got Warriors who are also coming up on that bottom objective. So that'll be like actually secured. And he's basically, if everything goes to plan, he'll have 1 boss on that side of the table who has to go to 2 different objectives at once. Can't really clear either. Well, can clear either of them. But we'll basically have to move backwards is going to be the better play for him. So I'll be fine there. And then I think things will get dicey. Like I'll kill all the Snagga. There will be no more Snagga boys. So Lukas will be down to pretty scrappy. I think I like my position. The only thing that has to happen is I have to get a Fights Last off on the Snagga boys.
Right, because remember that he has 3 assets this turn and 2 of them are melee. And our units are hyper lethal into each other. Like if any one of them connects before something else, it's gone. There's no like, oh, I killed a couple of your guys. It's like, yeah, my 5 commandos kill your 10 acolytes, no problem. So he fights first into my commandos, and he relies on one of his Fights Last to hit my Snaggas. Unfortunately, I think this was the more important, even more than the explosion. This was one of the more important things that happened in the game was that you cast Fight Last on an 8. I denied it on a 9. So now those 2 CP that I have banked from last turn go into interrupting with those Snaggas, and they kill basically most of the Warriors and all of the Gene Stealers. And all of a sudden, this game is not looking good for you.
No, it's not good at all. I do succeed on holding you to a 0 primary, though. I will commend myself for that. You got no primary turn 2. I got you down to 1 objective. It was great. Unfortunately, I scored 0 primary, not only turn 2, but also turn 3, turn 4, and turn 5.
Unlucky. Yeah. Turns out that when you go second, you get a 15 at the end, unless your army is dead.
Yeah, and, getting tables is not conducive.
That came down to denying that Fight Last and that truck exploding.
Yeah.
Crazy game.
Full props to Lukas. Because
there was a lot of stuff. So that was like
Yeah.
turn. What was that? That was turn 2.
That was turn 2.
A ton of important stuff happened on turn 2. From that point onward, there was still a lot of micro movement. There was still a lot of decisions that were really cool. That being said, the game, I don't know if you agree with this, Tyler, I felt the game was pretty much over after that fight
The moment you deny that fight's last, the game ends.
There was a lot of like scrapping out. You got a lot of points from like assassinate and getting engaged points, but
I got my full rod,
the game is over.
No, there's no way I come back.
I go, those acolytes that killed the commandos can't return to the shadows because Tyler either is out of CP or he needs to stand on an objective to force me to send stuff back there. So I send my boss back there. Turns out a boss kills 10 guardsmen. So I thrashed those guys. And from there, it spiraled out of control because Tyler started running out of assets. And the things that I have right in front of his face, I didn't have to worry about Overwatch because he was out of CP. So like 7 Beast Naga Boys, 30 Tebelgants gone. Like they hit like a truck. So
for sure. So at the end of the day, I end up with 0 to 20 on primary. I do hold you to a 0 primary turn 5, which I found very funny. So you beat me by 20 on secondary or on primary, and you beat me by 13 on secondary. So the final score is 31 to 64 in favor of Lukas, which means that I am going home 5-1, very happy with myself, and Lukas is moving on 6-0 to the Shadow Round.
Yeah, it's Shadow Round time. Yeah. So the Shadow Round was it was wild. For those who aren't aware of what it is, basically, for these large majors, you need to have 8 undefeated players going into the final day, because that way after round 1 you're down to 4, after round 2 you're down to 2, and then after the third round you've got 1 guy left, and that's the winner. So you need to have 8 undefeated players, and we had, what was it, like 13? 10? I don't know how math works. Anyway,
I think there was some people with ties.
Yeah, but they weren't
official,
in it, right?
The official ruling is that it's supposed to be the minimum number of players required, not counting people with 5-0-1. So in theory, they very easily could have done 8, 9, and 10. Or sorry, 7, 8, and 9, 10 playing, but they decided to do 5 through 12. That's not, or I don't care. The moral of the story is Lukas is playing against Anthony Vanella in the Shadow Round for a spot in the top 8. Nick, you want to run us through his list?
Yeah. So after 9 hours of Warhammer and a crazy game that you all just heard, Lukas gets to very quickly wolf some food down and then play against the thicker city list piloted by Anthony Vanella. So this list has a Master Homunculus, 9 Homoxites, 2 squads of 5 Grotesques, 3 squads of 2 Talos, Drazar with the Warlord Trait Hatred Eternals. That's the full hit and wound reroll, which I like that a lot. I don't see a ton of people do that, so that's cool to see. Squad of 5 Rax, 2 squads of 2 Chronos, and these are -1 damage Chronos. The whole list is -1 damage. And then a Court with 4 Slith, 2 Urgol, an Archon with Fight Last and the Huskblade, and then 5 Cabalites in the Raider just to kind of round out the patrol.
Yep. We played on battle lines. I have experience in the Thick City on battle lines. It's a game that I played in practice multiple times against good Pacific Northwest Thick City players. John Starks, Jeremiah Bergdale. I played against both of them. Done pretty well on it in the past. Unfortunately, at this point, like I can tell you how tired I was going into the Shadow Round, but like to really have to like live that experience was like something completely else. I had also at this point in the day eaten 1 apple and 1 Wetzel's pretzel. So yeah, my body was doing great, man. No,
are you
that's a
freaking
total
kidding
lie.
me? You didn't have lunch?
No, I didn't have lunch.
Lukas! Tune in to episode like 12 when we talk about how to actually eat at a gosh darn tournament and force Lukas to eat food. Anyway,
yeah, so I was
say,
in an interesting mental state for this game. Go ahead, Tyler.
I was very glad. I was like very proud that you would be going on, and a bit bummed that I wouldn't. I was very glad that I did not have to play another game at this point in time, because this looked miserable. But I mean, it's also freaking awesome. So go on, Lukas.
Yeah, so let us tell us your thought process this game. Secondaries you took.
Yeah, I took banners in battle lines. A lot of people came up to me and said that's really weird. There's a couple of reasons why I took banners in battle lines, and I often consider it. It's if I can set up safe midfield objectives, banners feels okay. I have a lot of OBSEC, so banners feels okay for that reason. Also, I'm exhausted, and banners is a secondary I'm familiar with. I was chatting with Mark Perry before the game, and he's like, yeah, dude, take Rod and behind enemy lines. I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to try to play 2 secondaries I've never picked before on my 4th game of Warhammer on day 2. Like, that's not okay. So I took the stuff I'm familiar with. I took Stranglehold, I took Banners, and I took Big Game Hunter because I figured he's got 11 vehicles. Some of them occasionally come back to life. I'll probably get like a 9 or a 10 if we play the game out to its conclusion. And that'll be pretty good for me because 9 or 10 is pretty respectable, especially into a list that's designed to not give up many kill secondaries like Tick City. Turn 1, I go first. Again, to reiterate, I've played this scenario and against this list multiple times. And in the past, when I've gone first, what I do is I stay outside of 26 inches because 26 inches is like the traditional Tick City threat range, either shooting heat lances or advancing and charging you. I throw all that out of the window because I'm super tired and put my kill rigs in forests in the middle of the table so that he's, shooting me with his heat lances on 5s. I figure hitting on 5s, wounding on 4s with no rerolls, on average, he just comes shy of killing a kill rig. Anthony hot rolls like hell and kills a kill rig and like 3/4. And I'm like, crap. So, you don't complain about dice. So I won't. It was unfortunate that he rolled that hot, but importantly, I didn't. And here's the takeaway: I didn't need to put myself in a position where his dice could have bailed him out. Right? I'd played this before. I knew the scenario, and I knew the matchup was good for me if I stayed back and played my cards right outside of 26 inches. But instead, my brain said, "Hey, let's just park in the middle of the table, see what happens, play the odds." The odds didn't go in my favor, which is a bummer. It's totally fine to admit when the dice screw you, but it's not okay to let that get in the way of a learning opportunity. And the learning opportunity for me was I shouldn't have put myself in a position where the dice could have screwed me. So good on Anthony for taking advantage of my own mistake. From here, what I do is I just figure I'm playing down. Let's take some risks. I launch my whole army at him. I put basically 10 Meganobs in the War Boss, all the Drucker stuff on his home field objective. I kill the racks that are there, and I kill the Court of the Archon. I kill the other stuff that's in my face, a Raider, some Cabalites, 2 Chronos on a flank. And I basically say, yeah, you can have your 5 Grotesques that are over there, and you can have your 6 Talos and 2 Chronos that are over here. I'm going to own everything else on the table. Unfortunately, Dark Eldar at the end of the day still trade in melee really effectively. What that meant was that his punchback was much stronger than I was anticipating. Just the 5 Grotesques that were on the one flank ended up winning it against my kill rig and 20 orcs, which is wild. But it happened. I could have managed that better. That's a small detail, but I could have managed that flank a lot better. So morals of this game, it was a lot of fun. I ended up conceding at the end of turn 3 just because Anthony and I were both super zonked. I could have probably scrapped out a narrow loss. A loss is still a loss in the shadow round, so I figure let Anthony go to sleep and get ready for his game tomorrow. Super fun game. And yeah, I learned a lot from it. Most notably that I need practice on endurance. This is something we need to start doing is going, as up and coming players is practicing 3 games in a day, not just 1 or 2 against your friends when you come over, practicing a full RTT or at least, and if not that, go ahead and do an Ironman, right? Do 3 or 4 games in a day, just work on the physical and mental endurance of playing tough games all in a row. And then from there, you can see yourself be a better player because my brain was used to 3 games in a day. After the 3rd game, it kind of shuts off. And I definitely had some serious brain farts against Anthony that cost me. What do you guys think? Do you have any questions about how I played this game?
Yeah, I know you talked about like the initial engagement with the heat lances into the kill rig. So something that's important is like when you feel like you're in a disadvantageous matchup, like kind of recognizing where you have to take those risks. Something that I do a lot of times as Necrons is going for that 48% charge at a deep strike with the Veil, because sometimes it just wins you the game. So in that situation, you said like I'm going to put the kill rigs in the force and let's see what happens, right? You didn't need to be within the heat lance range, right? Because your guys can wah and rocket forward like 16 inches, right? You could have been 26.1 away and been completely fine, right?
Yep.
So that's something that's really important to take away, right? Like, there are some games where you need to take risks. It's disadvantageous, and some where you don't at all. So,
yeah, there was no reason for me to take risks where it's appropriate. That was not an appropriate place for me to take a risk, right? There was no reason for me to play that aggro. And again, it's okay to admit when your dice bone you, but it's not okay to let that get rid of in the place of a learning opportunity. And what I learned was, don't put yourself in a spot where you can take unnecessary damage if you don't need to.
Like, yeah, you shouldn't have.
Against the Thousand Suns guy, it was worth it for me to put all my stuff in the middle because there's a damage cap on how much he can do. Against Thick City, it's free damage for Anthony if anything connects. So there's no reason for me to give him all that free damage, and I did because I was tired.
Yeah.
Interesting game, though. Still super fun. Awesome scrap. Obviously, Anthony's known for his love of just scrapping it out in the midfield, and I obliged that. Definitely still killed a lot of stuff. It was a good game. Honestly, I had a lot of fun. Never played against Anthony before. This was kind of the first big name, quote unquote, I've played against in 40K. This game and watching you play against John Lennon the next day, Tyler, really kind of convinced me that we still have a long way to go as players, right? Like we're up and coming. We're doing pretty well. We're doing well for ourselves for sure. But we have so much to learn and so much to grow in terms of as players. So that's kind of the gist of this podcast, right? Is following along on our journey, talking about how things are going and where the areas of growth are for us and where we're struggling and just cataloging that all.
Yeah, absolutely. I could not agree more. It's kind of wild to get to see firsthand how big the spread is between some of the lower table players and some of the top guys. But really, it's crazy to see between the guys like us who are going 5-1, 6-0, like absolute top performing, versus the guys who are winning the events. Playing into John is just such an exercise in humility to see like everything that I think is crazy clever and I'm really excited about. He's like, yeah, I mean, I assume that was what you were going to do. And then you do that and that. And I didn't even think of that play. So it's going to be really fun to get to really scratch our brains and plumb deep to get to that next level and find out what that's going to take in what should be a much more engaging season with a lot more real big events for us to compete in. Fingers crossed on the State of the Apocalypse.
Yeah, and that last game too, if you do want to watch it, the game between Lukas and Anthony Vanilla, it was streamed on the FLG stream.
Yeah, if you want to watch me get called a bean-eating human tree person, yeah. Falcon's got some great commentary of my
also
Anthony's weird noises.
Watch Manny Chima roll 200 Feel No Pains for 20 minutes. That's also included.
Gotta keep count of that rack count, dude. That rack count is important stuff.
So that's it. That's all. What? 13 rounds of Warhammer between you guys. I know we had real quick. Let's start with just kind of like real quick MVPs in your list and underperformers. Tyler, what do you think was the MVP in your list?
MVP is the Walking Hive Tyrant, no questions asked. I took to the last 5 times, and I scored 5 times 5 would be 70. I scored 70 points out of 75 possible on it. I lost 5 points when the Hive Guard died in the first game. It was fantastic points in every game that I needed it. So he was fantastic.
All right. And what do you think was something that was an underperformer, if there was any?
Yeah, I wasn't super jazzed on the Acolyte squad. It felt like half the time I either just wanted them to go in and grab an objective, and whether or not they would really kill everything was questionable. The drills are kind of hit and miss. I want to investigate some other options there. But when they don't have Might from Beyond, they just don't hit quite as hard as I'd like them to. So
this is the 3d6 charge squad?
Yeah, the 3d6 charge squad.
Okay. Awesome. And then what would you say is the biggest thing you learned? Like number one from level
I mean, the number one thing I think has to be all about sportsmanship and giving your opponents the benefit of the doubt. I really don't like how that game 5 ended up, but game-wise, in game, like I'm sure Lukas is going to say, it's all about not opening yourself up to unnecessary risks, even if those risks are a 1 in 18 chance of losing a Sky Slasher, 1 in 18 chance to lose the game to make the game very playable for Lukas as opposed to a really bad situation versus just not at all. Like, that's got to be the big takeaway in game wise for me.
It's good. Yeah, in a dice game, minimizing risk, really important. Yeah. Lukas, what was the MVP of the event for you?
Oh man, it's either gonna be just Beast Snagga Boys. 110 points for a unit that hits that hard and is that hard to remove is really good, especially when it goes into kill rig. Or, and I'm gonna say him because he's getting cut from the list, even though he's a ton of fun, just because I'm going for a different archetype now. Head Wampus, Kill Chopper, Brutal but Cunning Boss. Absolute Chad, kills basically everything. This guy kills like a Talos and a half every time he fights, even though they're -1 damage, 5 of Feel No Pain, and he's 2 damage.
Well, not anymore.
Not anymore. Yeah, now he kills the whole unit. Just ooh. Yeah. So yeah, I mean that guy is a total Chad, and I'm very sad he's getting cut from the list. But such a cool model, and he did a ton of work for me. Least valuable player, Commandos.
Big sad.
Which is weird. Yes, big sad. They're super cool. In the old Truck Knob list, they were better than the Truck Knobs, and now they're the worst unit in the list. I don't know why. Maybe they just had an unlucky run at LVO, but I think they killed like a couple Gene Stealers against TJ and a couple Rubik Marines. No, not even that. I think they killed like a single-digit number of models, all 20 of them over the course of 7 games. So like, either I was using them incorrectly or they were bait for other units, but they were just not very good. So they're getting cut down to, and they're going up in points. Lol.
Yep.
So they are, definitely necessary. They're getting cut down to like 2 squads of 5 basically for actions and holding objectives and stuff.
And I mean, in new missions, them not having OBSEC is going to be a real pain in the tail.
Yeah,
because they can't pregame hold anymore.
Yep. You still need something that drops in the midfield if your codex has it. So I'm obliged to take 5 of them at least. Not obligated to. Yeah.
I'm gonna guess that's why they went up, even though they like don't sticky objective. It's just especially that one mission where you don't get starting CP unless you're in the midfield. So
Yep.
All right. Biggest thing you learned. What do you think?
The game is just as much about your endurance and your attitude, outlook toward it, as it is about the actual matchup and how well you know your army. One of the biggest reasons I lost to Anthony, obviously, was incredible play and my own unnecessary risk, but also as soon as turn 2 hit and I was like, crap, I'm down way more points, my mental state was like, I'm exhausted, let's just kill as much stuff as possible and then concede. That also did not help in me winning the game, as it turns out, if I just give up immediately. I mean, I definitely still went and played the game as best as I could, but my heart wasn't super duper in it. And usually I've got a very like stubborn, like never give up attitude, which serves me pretty well. At that point, I didn't really have that attitude, and that bit me in the butt. That being said, there's a lot to learn in that regard, right? Like I'm just being not a stubborn player to your opponent, but never giving up on a game, because any game is winnable if you put your mind to it and you try your damnedest.
Awesome.
All right,
cool.
Boys.
Well,
we'll be going back to LVO. I see this in our show notes. Definitely, so horrible. Definitely not going back to LVO. No. All of us are going back to LVO. I think we're all excited for this. I know, Nick, you're definitely bummed that you couldn't come, but there is next year, and I think we're all going to do that, aren't we?
For me, very excited to be going for the first time. So, and also something I'd say, just like hearing you guys talking about it, and I'm sure for those listening and those watching as well, it has gotten me very excited for this season of 40K.
Yeah, the new season is hype.
Yeah. So, even though we are, all incredibly happy with our performances at LVO, this podcast did go undefeated in regulation, if you don't count the mirror. This past season, bit of a mess. Some of that was our fault. Some of it was the Apocalypse's fault. But we're hoping to go into next year with a little bit more organization. So definitely tune in next week. Listen to us get some advice from one of the most established players in 40K. We will be having Brad Chester on top 5 finisher this year and one of the greatest players of all time. He's going to be talking with us about goal setting, aspirations for the 2022 season, and how to kick this show off on the right foot. So with all that being said, thank you so much for tuning in. I've been Tyler.
I'm Lucas.
And I'm Nick.
And we'll see you next week. Have a great one.